It is noon Pacific time as we welcome you into the 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live stream. Studio 31 presented by Allegiant. We are on the air looking back at all the deals that have happened, and because of what happens generally at the NHL Trade Deadline, there's a flurry of action in the last half hour leading up to it. Darren Millard along with the Olympian Darren Elliott here in Studio 31. There's a backlog of trade calls, so some deals could happen in the next half hour, even though the National Hockey League Trade Deadline has just closed off all the action. Not the most extensive day. The Vegas Golden Knights, as far as we know it right now, have nothing to report as far as a transaction, but again, that could change in the next little bit. But there is one roster development, and that is Derek Pouliot has been claimed off waivers by the Seattle Kraken. It waited 2.5 years to get back in the National Hockey League, signed that one-year deal, that National Hockey League deal the other day, played 14 minutes. He was a great addition, and the Seattle Kraken trying to complement their roster.
They're trying to build their roster with all the moves that they've made. I mean, that was their whole point. Their general manager, Ron Francis, was very active in unloading roster players. And sure enough, a guy like Pouliot comes along. It's like, hey, we do need some players to finish out the season. Perfect timing. He played well in his games here, filled a void on the blue line for the Vegas Golden Knights, and now he goes to Seattle.
If you are watching and have a question about what's happening either with the Vegas Golden Knights or around the NHL, let us know. Log on and fire us a question. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. We'll go around the National Hockey League presented by MGM in just a little bit. Reading the room, we have Ashley Weiss in St. Paul, Minnesota, where the Golden Knights are set to take on the Minnesota Wild. She will try and catch up with Jonathan Marchessault in just a little bit. And Kelly McCrimmon, the general manager of the Vegas Golden Knights, is also scheduled to stop by and tell us about the 2022 experience at the NHL Trade Deadline. In years past, Vegas has always been the team acquiring talent, but with all the injuries and the salary cap constraints where they are, things are a lot more complicated as far as just adding that big piece at the trade deadline. Of course, Jack Eichel you considered being that big piece. Minnesota Wild later on today, we're on the air at 4:30 on AT&T Sportsnet. The pregame show on Fox Sports Las Vegas starts at 4 o'clock and face off just after 5. Big game for the Vegas Golden Knights trying to win their third in a row. What's this day like for everybody, players who have to play on the National Hockey League deadline day?
Well, once it's settled and you're able to, kind of like the old musical chairs. Okay, you're in position, play wherever you are, get to wherever you need to get to if you can't make it in time to play tonight's game. There's relief from a lot of sense. There's excitement for a lot of players, especially if they're going to a team that wasn't going to make the playoffs to now a playoff situation. So it's a lot of emotion, and then it's like back to business.
Our broadcasters are standing by. We'll get to them in just a little bit. Dave Gosher and Gary Lawless in St. Paul, Minnesota at the Lexington Room as the Minnesota Wild will host the Vegas Golden Knights tonight around the National Hockey League presented by MGM. And the biggest deal of the day goes to the Minnesota Wild, and it involves Marc-Andre Fleury, acquired from the Chicago Blackhawks in a trade that there's some familiarity with the general manager, Marc-Andre Fleury, in trying to convince him to go, because we heard a couple of weeks ago that he had no real interest in being traded today, and also assesses a need on a team that's backed up a little bit.
They've backed up. They haven't had any consistency. Tough day for, you want to talk about emotions. Cam Talbot, he's like, I'm a number one goaltender. We're fighting for a playoff spot. Oops. Suddenly you're not going to play very much by the looks of it down the stretch. Interesting. Again, is that going to move the needle? I'm not sure. Bill Guerin's trying to do a few things. He got some toughness as well on the back end. So he hasn't really, sold out. He's saying, hey, I believe in this group. The GMs are trying to do this, walk a fine line, some of them. Trying to get some new players, but not tell my group that, we've abandoned ship here down the stretch. And I think he's done that. Bill Guerin has done that with the acquisition of Marc-Andre Fleury and some toughness in the Middleton trade today.
A lot happening in and around the Central Division.
Yeah.
The sell-off in Arizona didn't really materialize Jacob Chikrin, from the reports that are coming in right now, has not been moved, and he's been talked about forever. So we're still waiting to see if there's some last-minute fallout from that. Colorado had a lot going on. Colorado, Minnesota seemed to be the two teams that were jostling the most.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a team like Colorado, truly odds-on favorite, right, to be a Stanley Cup contender, they added what you typically see. Okay, all our stars are healthy, so we need some depth. Guys that can play up and down in the lineup. You've heard the terms, and they get a guy on the blue line with Manson, who can play a rugged game, give you some minutes. And today they get Arturi Lehkonen for the Montreal Canadiens, who can do the same. He can big body, good defensively, can play up and down the lineup. That's what you'd expect from the top teams, and teams like Toronto that consider themselves top teams, even though they might not be. They go out and shore up their blue line because that's the perceived weakness. Same thing with St. Louis Blues. They go out and get a veteran defender. So you can almost predict some of those moves. I don't think you could have predicted necessarily, even though there's lots of chatter about Fleury ending up in Minnesota. It seems like the Department of Redundancy to me because Cam Talbot was having a good season.
Other moves that we can tell you as we go around the NHL presented by MGM, Marcus Johansson ends up back in Washington.
Makes sense, right?
That was an interesting. We've had a couple of those situations where players have gone back to where they were more familiar. Minnesota active with Jacob Middleton because Marc-Andre Fleury comes in. Capo Kakkonen pulled off the morning skate. He was on the ice. He's taken off the ice. Jacob Middleton ends up with the Minnesota Wild. He's been playing great with the San Jose Sharks as of late. Frederick Allard, Braden Burke in a Nashville-LA Kings swap, and Alex Biega ends up with the Nashville Predators from the Toronto Maple Leafs as Toronto kind of works out their roster.
Right, and that's organizational depth. He wasn't really playing that much. What we didn't talk about on the east side, right? I mean, Florida, very active. The big name was Giroux.
They did all their stuff before. Tampa,
that's right.
The same thing.
Well, they got Hague today, right? I think was that today? The defenseman, depth defenseman, and Ben Sherratt. So they did some big things for a team that has been leading the league in scoring all year, running near the top of the pack all season long. Yet they were very, very active. That can backfire sometimes.
Did you see anybody really move from middle of the pack to contender status or contender status to real favorite this year?
Well, I like Tampa Bay's move because they know the ingredients that the recipe requires, and they go out and they get the kid Hagel, who has proven to be the kind of a guy again that second, third line guy can move up and down the lineup. Play defensively, play a little bit rugged, and play what they sometimes call, quote-unquote, playoff-style hockey.
We're still waiting to see whether Vegas slides in with a last-minute deal as we pass the National Hockey League trade deadline, and we'll get to Dave Gosher and Gary Lawless in just a little bit. Ashley Weiss also in St. Paul, Minnesota. She will chat with Jonathan Marchessault shortly here. But from a Vegas standpoint, given all the injuries and the salary cap gymnastics that they have to do because players are out and obviously long-term injury, but you can't necessarily acquire anybody in case somebody comes back. There's that fine line there. So this is an unusual year for the fans who have been used to acquiring that piece and the complementary piece or big name piece.
Well, and they've done an excellent job of that at the trade deadline. Robin Leonard was one case. Again, those kinds of trades make a lot of sense when you're a front runner, like Golden Knights have been in the 4 previous entries into the playoffs and at the trade deadline. But this year, it's like, okay, those moves you could almost predict. Depth guys, these kinds of things. This year, as you said, you have to be healthy to be able to add substantially to. You have to know what your lineup looks like. Not what it might look like, what it could look like, and that's been the whole season. So if you don't have a clear picture of what your roster looks like health-wise, then it's really difficult to make any substantive moves at the trade deadline, in my estimation.
We'll lean on Gosher and Lawless in just a second, but your assessment of what you've seen the last 2 games from the Golden Knights as they break out of their stumble.
The things you like to see, you score goals. And it's interesting, right? The power plays come back, and the guys get their mojo going, right? You score 4 straight games, you scored a power play goal. The last game I really liked the fourth, because so much has been made of the reconstitution or rebranding of the fourth line and the style of play. Well, I like that game an awful lot last game. I mean, Howden with 5 hits. These guys played like over 14 minutes. You know, Amadio scores. Keegan Colasar had some destructive hits, but they're not just hits that are puck optional, where you're just energy and let's take time off the clock, which is a lot of the case had been that way before with the fourth line here. Now it's with a purpose. So Howden, to me, had 5 hits, but it wasn't so much that he holds on to the puck. So again, it's a grinding style that has to be part of the rest of this season.
And the difference between the previous games, it was Brett Howden's back in the line the last 2 games.
Right. I mean, Janmark, right? Janmark steps back in, scores a shorthanded goal. So suddenly you score on the power play, and your penalty kill percentage hasn't been good lately, but you score shorthanded, and it's going to be tough to kill penalties without McNabb. He's still sidelined, and if you're looking at up front, Riley Smith, those are key cogs to the penalty kill. But your special teams have kind of emerged, and oh, by the way, a young goaltender had himself a game.
And then you've got the Jack Eichel situation, and I know that he's played 15 games before the victory over the Los Angeles Kings, but there was the reports that he was doubtful, and we weren't necessarily expecting him to be in the lineup after accepting the puck against the Florida Panthers, and it was almost like a trade deadline plug-in there on the weekend, because he appeared and gave that building, that team, I'm sure, a big lift.
Lots of juice. First of all, respect is earned no matter what kind of resume you bring into a team on a trade. And I'm sure he earned a lot of points with his teammates, just giving him all he had, despite an upper body injury that kept him less than 100% and might for a while. Doesn't matter. He played an engaged game. He was a plus player. He had an assist on the game, which turned out to be the game-winning goal, and he played physically. And to me, my hat was off to him for doing that, and he played very, very well.
Report in from Frank Sarabarelli and Pierre Lebrun is Ricard Raquel from the Anaheim Ducks to Pittsburgh, which is a very Pittsburgh-type acquisition. A player that can play all over your lineup, add some depth, and just when Pittsburgh was talking about we're not going to do much this year because we've emptied the cupboard already, they acquire Ricard Raquel, who had been linked to a number of teams, including Vegas at times today.
Yeah, and again, where he ends up, another team that is certainly considers themselves Stanley Cup worthy. The Pittsburgh Penguins got the same veteran core group. They add a veteran. They don't add a kid. They don't add what's it going to be like. A guy like Raquel has been there and has scored. I think he's got, like 15, 16 goals this
16,
year.
Yeah.
So
two-time 30-goal scorer.
Right. He's going to score 20 this year. So he was better this year than he had been in the previous season and a half. But that he's going to be playing up in the lineup as well with some skilled players. So look for Ricard Raquel to have an impact, I think, with the Penguins. That's a good move for them.
Penguins with a deal that's just come in the last little bit, acquiring Ricard Raquel from the Anaheim Ducks. For Vegas, they face the Minnesota Wild tonight, and the only transaction that we're aware of is confirmed is that Derek Pouliot has been claimed off waivers by the Seattle Kraken. Pouliot had played most of the year with the Henderson Silver Knights, the last 2 games after signing the National Hockey League deal with the Vegas Golden Knights, 14 minutes, and happy that he's going to be in the NHL because he certainly persevered. 18 games left for the Golden Knights, so occupying that second wild card spot. Let's send you now to Ashley Weiss, and Ashley Weiss is reading the room, and that segment is presented by Infusion Care. Ashley standing by with Jonathan Marchessault in St. Paul.
Jonathan, you've been through plenty of trade deadline days throughout your career. How would you describe what this day is like from a player's perspective?
I mean, it's something that I think as you grow older, you realize kind of out of your control. So like me right now, it's like out of my control. I don't think too much about it. But as a younger guy, I think it happens a little bit more often, and you don't necessarily realize how there's a lot of talk, but not necessarily a lot of action.
What are you guys doing throughout the day? Like, do you keep an eye on what's happening online? Do you talk to each other about anything? What's that like?
Yeah, I think we talk about it. I think I'm a big hockey fan, so I like to see what everybody's worth, you know, like the trades, good trades, bad trades, stuff like that. So definitely talk about it for sure.
What do you say to the younger guys who maybe don't know how to handle this day?
Just to make them realize it's out of your control. Like you control what you can do on the ice and off the ice, but those are higher level people, I would say, and they control it more than us, so don't worry about it.
This team's made some big moves on the deadline previously. What is it like when one of your teammates, one of your brothers gets traded? What are those conversations like?
Yeah, they're unfortunate, but we're all in the same boat. It's the way the business goes, so it's one of those things. You say good luck, we'll see you soon, and you kind of move on, and you obviously there's some trades that hurt more than others, but it's definitely not. It's unfortunate situation.
On the flip side, you'll have a lot of guys who join new teams today. What do you do as a player to make those new guys feel welcome in a room?
I mean, it's like beginning of the year a little bit. You want to like have like team dinners and stuff like that. You know, want to include everybody as soon as possible. You don't want anyone that is left out. So I think it's on the veteran guys to make sure that everybody's taken care of. And yeah, I think that's how we as a team handle it.
What are the challenges of having trade deadline day fall on a game day?
I mean, obviously, just you don't think about the game until you get to the rink, really, because you talk about trade deadline the whole day. So that's how I see it personally, and we'll make sure we're ready for business when we get there tonight.
The fact that there's been so much uncertainty around your team all season because of injuries, because of not knowing who's going to be in the lineup on any given night, do you feel like that helps you guys adjust to the uncertainty of this kind of day?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's so many talks about our team, right? Like we do a lot of moves fast when the results is not there. So it's gonna be, yeah, we're gonna keep a close eye on it. But it's like I said, it's kind of a little bit of out of our control, and we'll see what happens. But it's just our roster has been really different the whole year. So we'll see what happens here.
Is there a little bit of a sense of relief that once this day passes, you do know what team you have the rest of the season, and you can just focus on that final push to the playoffs?
Yeah, it is a relief, I think, to know like what's our team, what are we gonna work with for the rest of the season, and for like right now we're just focusing on making the playoff and get as much healthy bodies we can have, and that's really what we're concentrating on, and we can pass all the rumors and all that stuff behind us and focus on that.
Jonathan, I really appreciate you taking the time on a game day. Good luck tonight.
Thank you.
All right, guys, back to you.
Ashley, thank you. Reading the Room presented by Infusion Care. And if there's any team that should be used to the uncertainty of a day like this, it's the Golden Knights, who have dealt with all kinds of moving parts throughout this season due to the injuries that they've dealt with.
Yeah, from that standpoint, it's this is business as usual for them. Who's in, who's out, where are they coming from? Typically, it's been from Henderson. But yeah, uncertainty surrounding the lineup most of the season.
They take on the Minnesota Wild today, and we will see exactly what the lineup looks like as we get closer to game time. But right now, our broadcaster standing by. You've heard from Ashley Weiss in Reading the Room, presented by Infusion Care, over at the Lexington Room in St. Paul, Minnesota. Yeah, Dave, remind him. Tell him we're on the air. Please.
The camera's on.
Dave Gosher. And,
do you want
Gary
news or
Lawless.
not? Sure. Well, tell us something. Go ahead.
I got nothing.
Darren, thanks a lot.
I had to check.
Yeah, it's been it's funny, Gary. You know, and this is our 5th deadline day as the Golden Knights in their existence. The first 4 have been active, or at least the days leading up to it have been active. But the only thing, at least so far today, and we're at 19 minutes past noontime Eastern time, 19 minutes past the deadline. The only thing so far is Derek Pouliot on waivers to Seattle. We'll see if anything else develops. So I guess I ask you, is there a reason for that? Is it they think they might get some guys back down the road, or is it salary cap, or what do you make of what you've seen over the last little while?
Well, that's why I'm checking my phone, because stuff comes in for at least an hour after the deadline. That central registry they have to register all of the trades. They get backed up. George McPhee and Kelly McCrimmon don't announce anything until it's done. So, I'm careful not to bother them on this day, but I have sent a text and there's been no response. So we'll find out if the guys are busy, finalizing something and waiting for it to get registered, and then we'll make an announcement at some point in time. Or was this a day where they didn't have enough cap space to do anything, knew that they had players coming back in the next little while, and preferred their own players to others? Lots of things to find out and to discuss once Kelly McCrimmon joins us in a little bit. Sounds like something's going on.
Yeah, we'll see here. See if anything comes through. Interesting that today, if you look at some of the moves that were made from the Golden Knights here, or not made from Vegas, is around the league. The biggest trade today, obviously, is Marc-Andre Fleury coming to where we are in Minnesota. But some of the other big deals, Hampus Lindholm to Boston the other day, Claude Giroux to Florida. That happened the other day. But by far the biggest one, and we're in Minnesota, we've seen a lot of what Bill Guerin's had to say today. They had two in Cam Talbot and Kaapo Kähkönen. They trade him to San Jose, and now Marc-Andre Fleury, who you wonder if he even thought he was going to get moved, right? He played last night for Chicago. They didn't pull him, and he's got to say, right, with his no trade.
And not only did he play last night, his glove got pulled off. Blake Wheeler of the Winnipeg Jets and Fleury collided in a situation, and Wheeler pulled Fleury's glove off of his hand. Fleury then turned to the corner, and I believe it was Kyle Connor.
Yep.
Kyle Connor or Andrew Kopp, I forget, took a shot from the corner and just missed Fleury's hand. If that hits his hand, it breaks it. And
Bill Guerin's not happy.
And Bill Guerin's not a happy guy. And neither is Kyle Davidson, because he wouldn't have got that conditional pick. So interesting stuff. I was watching last night, and we'll never know when Fleury kind of made it clear that he was willing to go to Minnesota. But after the fifth goal last night, he kind of went a little snapzilla, and I was watching it with you and thought to myself, I wonder if he goes in after this and says, okay, enough. I'd like to go somewhere and see if I can't chase. I did hear him talking earlier today, and he drove his kids to school this morning. The trade had not been done. His kids were all crying in the car because they don't know where daddy's going to be. And by the time they get home from school today, daddy's not going to be there. He's in a plane right now, as a matter of fact, on his way to Minnesota, where he will back up tonight. That's the plan anyways, to back up Cam Talbot for the Wild against Vegas. So yeah, big deal. Fleury, his numbers haven't been great this year, but I'd be careful to read too much into that. I can remember when the Golden Knights traded 2 second-round picks for Alec Martinez. A lot of people thought, oh, wow, what an overpay. And someone in the Golden Knights organization said to me, be really careful about judging a defenseman on a bad team. His numbers are going to be awful. They're bad. Puck's going in the net, you're spending all the time in your own zone. And I think you could say the same thing to Fleury. And some will say, well, what about the save percentage? Like, that's the number to look at. Well, when you're seeing that high volume of shots all the time, I think, and high quality shots, I think it affects a player as well. The deep analytics say Fleury has just been okay this season. Maybe he gets revitalized and helps Minnesota go on a run. Bill Guerin, and we discussed this yesterday, he's going to have a cap charge next year of $13 million for the buyouts of Parise and Suter. Then the next year, a cap charge of $15 million, and the year after that, a cap charge of $15 million. So it's this year or bust for the Wild. They're going to play with a cap of around $65 million for the next 3 years because of that money that's maybe closer to $67 million once for those two guys going out the door. So this was their chance to take a run. Marc-Andre Fleury was the best rental goalie available, because there is word that John Gibson was available. That price would have been massive and he's not a rental, so that probably would not have worked for Bill Guerin.
Yeah, the goalie market was pretty thin outside of Fleury, right? There wasn't a ton if you were going to make moves here.
Yeah, I don't know if Lou
maybe
Lamoriello,
Gibson, but
I don't know if Varlamov, if Lou Lamoriello really made him available, he
Yeah.
would have been of interest to some folks. But yeah, no, it wasn't. Hey, goalies are hard to come by.
this can be, in Ashley's chat with Jonathan Marchessault, I found interesting, Gary. This can be an interesting and an unsettling day, right, for players. I mean, you especially for guys that have been with teams a long time, as as in Marchessault's been in Vegas for all 5 years. And I wonder how. I would imagine it depends. Players would handle it differently. If you are a player that feels secure in where you're at, you don't really worry too much about trade deadline day. But if you have a sense, I'll give you an example. The Anaheim Ducks. Pat Verbeek, their new GM, had said, look, if we can't, we have 3 unrestricted free agents in Lindholm, Raquel, and Manson. If we can't re-sign them, they're all going to go. True to his word, they all went, right? Manson goes to Colorado, Lindholm to Boston, Raquel to Pittsburgh. But I would imagine as a player, I don't know if you turn your phone off. Jonathan Marchessault said, I'm a hockey fan. I want to kind of know what's going on. But it can be a day, I would think, that your nerves are kind of you're on pins and needles for a good chunk of it anyways.
Yeah, well, listen, I think Kelly McCrimmon and George McPhee have proven that they're willing to trade anyone to make the team better, and that's so pretty tough to just sort of be comfortable in the Golden Knights. I'll be honest, I think most general managers are willing to trade anybody to get better. Like, you look at Doug Armstrong in St. Louis, if he traded Oscar Sundqvist today, big piece over there. If he thinks he can get better, he'll do it. Just go around the league. Look at what Colorado has done, what Carolina has done in the last little while. Players get moved. It is part of the job.
Calgary Flames, if you look at some of the teams that are in the upper echelon of the West, Calgary Flames, just former Golden Knight Ryan Carpenter goes from Chicago to Calgary. Of course, they traded for Tyler Toffoli a little while back. Calle Jarnkrok they picked up before the trade deadline. And then you look at Colorado, Gary, with Arturi Lehkonen going from Montreal to Colorado. Andrew Cogliano goes to the Avalanche as well. And we mentioned Josh Manson. So teams either ahead of the Golden Knights or around them, Minnesota, with Fleury today. They had also picked up Jost the other day, Delorier. So some teams around them that have been pretty active.
For sure. Now, what Kelly McCrimmon may tell us in a little while is, okay, well, I'm going to get Mark Stone,
Right.
Max Pacioretty, Riley Smith, Alec Martinez, Robin Leonard, like go down the list. He might say, those are going to be my trade deadline additions. And that's just a handful of the guys. There's still more out there that are injured. It's been pretty incredible what they've gone through. And actually, I was watching TSN this morning, and Mike Kelly, who works for one of the analytics companies, he was running this stat, and it's called expected goal differential. So it basically takes out what the goalie has done. So that's because that creates your actual goal differential, and it says this is what it should be without the goaltending part of it. And the top teams are who you would expect them to be. Colorado, Calgary, near the top of that list. But the Vegas Golden Knights, since January 5th, are 15th on that list. And think of who they've been missing.
Right.
So if I'm McCrimmon, knowing like this is why this has been such a mystery. We don't know the health situation of all these players for the Golden Knights. He may have had no plans to do anything today. He may have done something. We still don't know that. So it was a mystery, and it remains a mystery.
The great unknown
Yes.
is, when are these players coming back? They had 7 regulars out the other day. The only move so far today, guys, as we get set to send it back to you, is Derek Pouliot, who just signed with the Golden Knights the other day, played a couple of games in Vegas, hadn't played in the NHL in 2.5 years, and then on the waiver wire, and the Seattle Kraken grabbed him today. So that means the Golden Knights going to need a defenseman for tonight. I wonder if it might be Braden Pahal, who just recently played his first NHL game, but we'll see where things go here. But for now, guys, we'll send it back to you and see if there's any other news to report here shortly.
Look, he's on his computer again. You hadn't even
He's
signed
at breaking
off.
news. Well, if there's news to break, he'll break it.
Yeah. Other than that, it's playing Brick Breaker on the old phones.
Wordle.
Thanks, Dave. Wordle, that's the new. That's what the new kids
Hey, Elliot.
say.
Do me a favor. Reach across there and belt him.
Can't reach.
Give Peace a chance.
I'm very smart with my positioning
Damn
on
social
a two-person
distancing.
desk. We'll get back to Lawless and Gaucher in just a little bit. They were referencing the injuries, and I just did a little bit of work today. We've got Mark Stone on LTIR and Alec Martinez on long-term injury reserve. And Stone's been out 17 games. Tonight would be the 18th. Martinez has missed 50 games, the last 50 games. Then you have Pacioretty, who's missed the last 4. Riley Smith has missed 6. Braden McNabb's missed, this will be number 10. Haig, this will be 3. And Leonard's missed the last 6.
That's a good chunk of your roster. There's no up and down in between in terms of those names. It's not like are they call-ups? They're on that bubble. Henderson, those are star players in the league and a lot of your leadership. And it's been like that, as you said, for a long time, because you only mentioned 4 games for Pacioretty.
Yeah.
We know this is his 3rd time on IR. So tough season for him to stay healthy, and he was scoring at such a good rate.
We know that it's still possible. I want to let you know that a deal could come and be announced by the Vegas Golden Knights. So stand by. If it does happen, we'll tell you about it immediately. And at the end of this live stream, we will bring you a conversation with Kelly McCrimmon as he's scheduled to join us here in Studio 31. But there are some other deals, just an example of what could come. Some deals that are trickling in here. Yeah. Former Vegas Golden Knight Ryan Carpenter from Chicago to Calgary for a 5th-round pick. That's a good deal for the Calgary Flames.
That's just Calgary being, again, they feel they've launched themselves into contention as a true cup threat. And they go out and get a guy that can skate, forecheck, do all those Calgary Flames kind of things. Hard hockey.
Brad Treliving said today he was going to just nibble around the edges after acquiring Toffoli the other day and just work and see what happened. Vlad Nemestikov to Dallas from Detroit. Do you like that?
Yeah, a 4th-round pick. I thought Detroit could get more for Nemestikov, but Dallas, they're searching, right? I mean, they're kind of up and down and in and out in terms of what they've done. They acquire a goalie today, Scott Wedgwood, I think. So they're kind of hunting and pecking. Andrew Kopp going. The Rangers have really done some.
Yeah,
work.
Andrew Kopp from Winnipeg to the Rangers, and that's part of a build-up for the New York Rangers.
Yes,
Kopp and Tyler Mott goes there as well. Kopp was a Michigan teammate with Mott and Jacob Trouba, who was already there. They weren't there all at the same time, but they got a little Michigan connection going with the New York Rangers. That's interesting. Derek Brassard ends up in Edmonton. That sounds like it's one of the bigger deals or the only action that Edmonton's done. Kulak as well.
Right.
So Edmonton doesn't do the big deal, but they supplement.
But they did their big deal with Evander Kane. I mean, they've done so many things to try to get back in contention for a playoff spot, and GM Kenny Holland has done that. Long list of things leading up to this moment, and it's probably over the last 90 days. But they needed some depth on defense, so Kulak helps out there. But again, Brassard, he's always in play because he's one of those guys is a good, again, depth, playoff-style performer.
We have Max Domi. Vegas Golden Knight fans will remember him because he had the altercation with Nick Hague and Alex Pietrangelo the other night when the Golden Knights faced the Columbus Blue Jackets. So Max Domi ends up in Carolina.
Again, that fits the way they play the game. Guy that can scoot up and down the wing, has some scoring ability. Now he'll be playing with some better players, surrounded by maybe not totally better players, but depth, way more better players in Carolina than in Columbus right now.
Some of the deals that have all been announced after the noon Pacific time National Hockey League trade deadline. And if Vegas makes a move, we will make sure that we report it to you right here on our live stream presented by Allegiant for the 2022 National Hockey League trade deadline from Studio 31. If you have any questions or comments, make sure you log on and ask us, and we will answer those. Gila Monster on hockey, Gila Monster Hockey on Twitch asks, is there another team around the league with a comparable cap situation to Vegas? There's a few teams that are in long-term injury relief reserve. In fact, like almost half the league
Yeah.
is into that LTIR, where you have you've gone over the cap and you can use some of that injury money to spend on players and make sure that you can complement your roster that way.
Florida's doing it right now. I mean, yeah, there are, without having the numbers in front of me, if you're looking at top 10 teams in the league, very seldom, if any of those top 10 teams, they will be struggling with cap compliance, because you've pushed all in, unless you have some real young guys that you didn't expect to carry the mail for their entry level contracts, but that's rare. You might get one on a team like a Cale Makar, but everything else has exploded in terms of contracts for the Colorado Avalanche. So I would say that there's a number of teams that are right up against the cap or over.
And Vegas is lucky because they're spending all their money on players here that they're involved. The guys, Lawless and Gaucher, touched on it. Next year for Minnesota, all that buyout money really loops back for the next couple of years from Suter and Parise, and it puts them and that's why they go so hard this year to try and win now, because they've got the best chance to spend what's available to them instead of dead money.
Right, and some of those guys are on expiring contracts. It's just right now, like you said, go for it. You're all in. The thing about it, just think about the buyout it changed the culture. They had to do it. That's what Bill Gates did. It took some to really, I think it was bold of him to do that. Buy out Parise, buy out Suter, but it changed the complexion of their team in a positive way. But now you're looking at it. It's two really good players. That's what the salary will be for them. It's like, okay, so you're missing 13.7. Well, that's either a superstar or it's two really good players that you won't have the money for next season.
What we are working on is a potential trade involving the Vegas Golden Knights, and if that does happen, we'll tell you all about it. At the end of this show, though, we are going to be joined by Kelly McCrimmon, the general manager, to walk us through a little bit of what this year's been like, maybe get some updates on the players that are out of the lineup, and today. And how much action there was involved. One thing that's been interesting to really watch in and around the league, like Tampa Bay gives up a boatload, but they get a player with term on it in Hagel.
Yeah,
a couple of first-round picks. But then others, the price hasn't been quite nearly in that same ballpark, and it's been hard to get a read on where the market was this year.
Well, the market. I listened to Craig McTavish this morning. The market will be what it is, meaning that if I want to act now, like Tampa did, and maybe somebody else is sniffing around the guy that we want, price goes up. It doesn't set the market. It's just for that player. You know what I'm saying? So I look at.
It seems overly simple.
But it's called asset management. It's like,
I know you're a Cornell guy, but I'm not used to this simplicity from a Cornell guy. Everything's supposed to be really complicated and deep.
Well, I'm way more of a hockey guy than a Cornell guy. But if you think of like Sherratt, that set the market. It's like, not really. Not when you look at what Giordano, what Toronto had to give up. I don't know that there's always a setting of a level for a position and a type of player at the trade deadline, just because each situation, timing, who else might be involved, what you have to give up. I think it's on an individual basis, and you become a little bit more of a salesperson, certainly, to sell the package that you have to that team.
Edmonton acquires some middle of the lineup players. Calgary adds leading up to the trade deadline. LA, not a lot, but I'm not sure I expected a lot because it's been such a breakthrough season. So when you examine the competition for the Golden Knights right now, you haven't lost a lot of ground.
No, and don't forget, lots of times these things don't always work out. It's guy doesn't fit right in right away. Locker room changes, so you have that as well. But in terms of who was active in Edmonton, they've been tinkering and tweaking all season long. They still didn't address their goaltending. So
Are you surprised?
not with what was available, not so much. I mean, they've righted themselves. I still don't think it's good enough to be a factor. But the Evander Kane, that was the spark that they needed since he's come into the lineup. He had 12 goals and 20 points or 23 points or something. So he's been exactly what they needed to get them going from the funk that they were in. So from that standpoint, they've done. Now it's just like, up against the cap for that. The person had the question about the cap. They're up against it, so they couldn't do anything else very major at the trade deadline, but they did a couple of things that they feel helps their team.
In the Reading the Room segment with Ashley, who, as she chatted with Jonathan Marchessault and Reading the Room presented by Infusion Care, I thought Jonathan, who's so honest and so awesome, that was a really cool conversation that they had this morning after the skate in preparation for tonight's game against the Minnesota Wild. Jonathan said he pays attention to see what players are worth and the compensation. You were a player. I haven't heard that before, that players openly sit there. I guess if you're a fan, you're a fan, and you're rating it the same way that we do. But I just thought it was sort of really reading the room and taking you inside the game from the player perspective.
Great answer, and you're right. A great question by Ashley. And Jonathan Marchessault, long time down the road, if he wants to be sitting in these kinds of chairs, he'd be a fantastic analyst because of his honesty and his insight. Both from a business standpoint and an on-ice standpoint, but not stumping for Jonathan's future employment.
Are you going somewhere? you have
Well,
something you want to announce yourself?
By the time he's ready, I'll be long gone, you would think. So if I look at what Jonathan Marchessault was talking about, I think it's more, to me, it was always more unsettling or surprising. There are guys who are in the league could care less. Don't follow the standings, aren't really fans.
How many of those really exist? More than I would think?
More than you would think. And they just are good at hockey. And that always staggered me. Because I was such a sports fan and obviously such a hockey fan. So when Jonathan Marchessault talks like that, I identify with that. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm a fan as much as anything else. And I'm in that industry. Because that was the other part, the Cornell guy he comes out. I'm like, how can you be in this industry, even if you don't really like the industry you're in, and not be following it? It didn't make any sense to me. But came across guys over the years.
So this is what we're dealing with right now. And we've told you a couple of times that there's deals that come in after the deadline. And we ran through a list of them. Blue Jackets general manager Jarmo Kekalainen has just told a media member that there are 33 trades in the queue at Central Registry.
So are we doing this all the way up to a pregame show?
4:30? You don't have any.
I have no. Guess what? I'm wearing the same thing. So
10 hours on trade
don't
deadline
point it out.
day
Don't bother pointing it out.
is not a big deal. So let's just buckle in and we'll have some fun, because we'll go back to the guys Lawless and Gaucher in just a little bit. But that's the situation. So there is a chance that something could be breaking here on the Golden Knights front in at any moment. And Kelly McCrimmon's going to join us at the end of this live stream to give us his explanation and just walk us through what this day was like. But the Golden Knights in that second wild card position, coming off back-to-back wins, that seems to have given them some momentum tonight in Minnesota, tomorrow night in Winnipeg. It's the second last set of back-to-backs for the team. But now that they've got momentum, and I'm hesitant to call it momentum because they went on the 5-game road trip on the strength of back-to-back wins, but it did feel a little different, that there was some confidence, some swagger, some life in and around the team that was missing in that Columbus and then Winnipeg finish to the road trip.
It does to me, because the last game in particular looked more sustainable. It's like, okay, our first line looks like our fourth line. We're grinding. For those of you that like the hits and the counts, it was the most the team had all season long. To me, the numbers irrelevant. The style of play is what's relevant. They were willing to bang bodies, hold on to the puck, make things happen in the offensive third, and you had as much value from your fourth line as you did third, second, first. It was just roll those lines, grind them down, get some goaltending, get some special teams play, get a victory. Sounds simple. That's what you'll be trying to do again against Minnesota. Now you're talking about Minnesota. That potentially, from a wild card standpoint, is somebody that you're competing against and with for the Vegas Golden Knights. It's very important back-to-back set of games here for VGK.
Yeah, you can reel in Minnesota, and you can put away Winnipeg.
Correct.
In these next 2 games. You've got your Reign energy drink.
Yep.
Don't be afraid if we're going to be here for all 33
I don't
trades
need it
in
yet.
the queue.
I'm a coffee guy. And
Okay, well, it's there if you need it. And
fantastic.
And I may pull rank here and just say, slide it over to me.
You got it.
You can have your coffee.
I don't know what rank you're pulling, but you can. I'll give it to you anyway.
Playing the education card. Eh? They beat LA 5-1 and Florida 5-3. That's the last 2 games for the Vegas Golden Knights, and they did it with by scoring some goals and with a rookie goaltender. And I'd love to get your thoughts on what you saw from Logan Thompson. Pete DeBoer said he could see confidence building, not just game to game, but period by period.
Yeah, I mean that's good. I mean that's a question. I don't know if that's true. It's one of those things where.
Okay, what did you see then?
What I saw was a guy that was just battling. Okay, in Winnipeg, he went in halfway through, gives up 3 goals. It was a game. It's a crazy game. You're not feeling great about your game.
Yeah.
Then you get
How'd that sound?
That sounded great. so you get a start at home, and you're just battling. Oh, it's not just a start. It's against the highest scoring team in the National Hockey League. Mm-hmm. You're just trying to make saves any way you possibly can. Technique out the window. Just get it done. He did that. I think what the coach saw was better technique, which is a sign of confidence. And when I talk about that, is his feet were set so much more when receiving the puck. He was already to the spot to make the save. Whereas against Florida, there were a lot of moments his feet were still moving. He's sliding, and by the end, he might be kind of 180.
Is that because of the style Florida plays, or is it him just being more comfortable reading the play?
More comfortable reading the play, able to see a lot of the pucks. The shot total was high, but they really did a good job boxing out, not letting second chances happen, and the sight lines were good for Logan Thompson, but his positioning was good as well, which is a sign of confidence. So from that standpoint, maybe that's what the coach was seeing. It's like, wow, this guy's locked in. He's not sliding around. It doesn't look like a lucky save. Everything looks like, he's really dialed in.
You've been in that situation a little bit early on in your career, coming off the Olympic team and then into the National Hockey League. What's going through Logan's mind right now? Because he just got his first start this season in the National Hockey League with his team. I'm sure being in a situation of being the guy, and he has been, this was a conscious decision to start him the last 2 games to try and turn things around. They have. Where's his mind? How does he handle this, or should he handle this?
Just next game. So if you're an athlete,
but he admitted he talking about the goalie coaches
and the
in
noise,
the basement. Yeah,
but that's part of handling it. Like, I don't find that to be that unique, really. It's like, do you hear the chatter? Some guys do. Like I just said, if you follow your sport and your industry, you're going to hear everything, good and bad. To the degree that you should, maybe with social media, maybe turn things off a little bit if you're a pro athlete. But Logan Thompson, to me, he's just handling it by, this is where I want to be. I'm in the National Hockey League. I want to play meaningful games. I'm the go-to guy. The coach has confidence in me right now. I've reciprocated by having his back, by making him look good with that decision, getting the team 2 points. That's his focus. That's all it is. But it's where you want to be as an athlete. I'm in the National Hockey League. Well, I'm sitting on the bench. Yeah, great. Better money. Potentially if you have a 2-way contract. All those kinds of things. But it's always about playing. And that he's got himself to this point and coming through, phenomenal.
Boy, the 3-year contract extension looks brilliant, doesn't it?
It absolutely looks brilliant right now.
When you see where he was 2 years ago to where he got to last year, and now taking those steps. And we're not calling him
no
Patrick or Ken or Steve Penny even, or
we're calling him
like
a guy that made it to the National Hockey League, taking a very long road, got signed to a 3-year deal. He's probably going, yeah, that's probably more than he could have expected, 2 years prior. And he just kept moving forward.
Do you see similarities with Jordan Binnington or not?
I don't
Like
know.
one guy was part of the organization for years
That's right.
and years. But Logan is a little bit older and took a different route.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that he burst on the scene and carried him to a Stanley Cup final. We'll love that story if it plays out in part 2. But I don't know the Binnington story as well as I do Logan's. With a Canadian university and, going into the American Hockey League in a weird situation, obviously, everybody dealing with COVID to one degree or another, and he wins the best goaltender in the American Hockey. So he's done the right things that you can do to get to the next level. And now he's at the next level in the heat of a playoff race.
What are your expectations for him?
Because I really don't have any. Do you? Like, I don't have an expectation for Logan. Like, I love the story as it's unfolding. I love to see the development, but I don't see.
And you want to see it, hopefully, he rides it as long as he can.
Right, and continue. I mean, he's been
if
signed
there's a bump tonight or a bump tomorrow night or whatever, it's kind of expected, isn't it?
I mean, again, that's why we tune in.
Yeah.
I don't know what to expect.
What time was the pregame show again?
4:30.
4:30.
It's Sportsnet. But no, I don't have any expectations. I just love seeing these kinds of stories, develop, especially when it's on your team locally, because you can really get embedded in that story.
Some other league news to tell you about. Jesperi Kotkaniemi signs an 8-year extension in Carolina. That's interesting because Kotkaniemi was the player that Carolina offer sheeted from Montreal. And there was all kinds of speculation as to the
They thought they overpaid too, right?
To it and why they did it and whether it was payback. But Kotkaniemi, and he got off to a slow start this year.
It's like $6 million.
Now he gets the 8-year extension at an AAV of 4.8, which is probably the right number. But 8 years. Oh, you're not?
Well, I don't know. He's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he gets both to me. That's almost $40 million for a guy that's going to play third line center. Good on a good team, but that's cap strapping to me. You don't get both. 4 years at $5 million, maybe 8. Wow.
Well, we're still waiting to see if the Vegas Golden Knights have done anything, but I have just learned, and this is breaking news. You heard it seconds ago. You may not have realized it, but Darren Elliott is not president of the Jesperi Kotkaniemi fan club. So we can officially put that down.
He's an NHLer. He's a good player.
On that list. This is the newest flavor, by the way, raspberry sherbet.
Oh yeah, that's probably the same one over here.
So, are you a raspberry sherbet guy? I'm kind of angling for your.
You can have it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
good.
I'm black coffee hot.
We have another question. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube today. The trade deadline live stream presented by Allegiant. Question coming in: what do early deals and days, weeks before the deadline, do to the market on deadline day?
I don't think it does much to the market.
Like Toffoli this year, Jeff Carter last year.
Right. I don't think it does much other than it takes usually a bigger name off the board. I think it's more important for the team getting that player has more time to integrate and all the things that you would think, get settled, get ready. So when you're really, the time you're being acquired to make a difference down the stretch in the playoffs, you've had time to get your feet under you in your new situation.
We're going to go back to St. Paul in just a little bit as soon as Lawless and Gaucher are set up and ready to go, and we'll get that word and we'll send you there. But I'm looking at past moves at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Reeves, Tatar, Stone, Martinez, Leonard, Cousins, Janmark. Outside of Cousins and Tatar, like that
worked.
They stuck around.
Right. Again, GM's looking at not wanting rentals, and I can see why. I'd rather have a player. I'd rather have some hockey value to my trade deadline move. That's been the case here for the most part. Tatar ended up being short term just because it didn't work out.
Cheers. Dave Gosher and Gary Lawless at the Lexington Room in St. Paul, Minnesota. Bring you guys back in as the Golden Knights. You guys were at the morning skate today. You guys taking in everything VGK right now. Pretty important hockey game tonight, along with what we're tracking on trade deadline day.
Yeah, huge, Mallard, when you look at it. And these two teams, the Golden Knights and the Wild, if you look at what they've done here really since the All-Star break era, they've been mirror images of each other. They've been a roller coaster team. I think Vegas at last check was 7-11-1 since the break. Minnesota was 8-11-1. So Wild had a great start to the season. One of the reasons that they went out and traded for Marc-Andre Fleury is their goaltending had been inconsistent lately. Cam Talbot, although he had picked it up over the last few games, he had been inconsistent. Capo Kakinen, who they traded to San Jose for Jacob Middleton, he had lost his last 6 starts. They felt they needed to fill a void in that goaltending department. But once we get past the trade deadline, and I think we're still a ways away from doing that, an enormous game for both these next 2 games for Vegas. When you look at it, the Wild at 76 points, Vegas at 72. In Winnipeg tomorrow night, the Jets are only 4 points back. So enormous points on the line for a team that, has started to kind of turn and trend a little bit better, winning the last 2 games with the Golden Knights.
Well, the next 3, because you throw Nashville into that that mix as well, and then it's Chicago and Seattle twice. I think are the 3 after that. So if you look at that sort of 6-game chunk, you'd like to think that you could pick up some points against Seattle and Chicago. What can you do on the road against Minnesota and Winnipeg to get this thing started? They owe Winnipeg 1 from last week. The team went up there and they got pasted by the Jets. So interested that Bill Guerin kind of, we talked about this earlier. He has had to go all in here because of the situation that he has with the cap charge coming up for the buyouts on Parise and Suter. Parise, by the way, just signed an extension with the New York Islanders, as did Cal Clutterbuck. So again, we're waiting to hear from Kelly McCrimmon, and there are 33 trades. I think Darren mentioned this. There's a while ago, 15 minutes ago, there were 33 trades backed up at Central Registry. So we don't know if Vegas has done something or not. Nothing has leaked out on Twitter at this point. And, if something is going on, McCrimmon and McPhee are they're busy with that. They don't have time to come and chat with us or text us and let us know sort of what's been going on in that regard. So it's very fascinating to see what happens. And again, this to me is, I'll hear GMs say it all the time. Well, we our own guy was our deadline acquisition, and potentially Mark Stone. I got on the elevator the other night at T-Mobile Arena, and Mark Stone, Max Pacioretty, and Braden McNabb were already in the elevator. They all kind of smiled at me, and then got off the elevator, and Robin Leonard was standing there. So Kelly McCrimmon could very well come on later on today and say, yeah, those are my deadline acquisitions.
Yeah.
Those guys are going to be healthy in this period of time. We don't know if that's the case, but if as quiet as we think Vegas has been, because even if something is announced, it's not 5 deals, it's not or three deals that we saw some teams make. It would probably just be 1. We don't know the magnitude if one was done or not. So that's kind of my thinking. It has been my thinking for a while that those were going to be his acquisitions, his own guys.
It's amazing, Carey, when you think about it, just how much of a different feel trade deadline 2022 is compared to the 4 previous, right? Mallard just ran down all the moves they made. Yeah. This year, it's been a lot of chatter, but it's been real quiet. Well, you wonder, to your point, is it quiet because it's a lack of space, or they've got one heck of a team that's on injured reserve right now?
Yeah. Well, we were in Ottawa earlier this year having dinner when we got a text from someone saying, you guys got Eichel, and then that was announced the next day. You, Shane, Dave and Shane and I and Dan Duva, our desks are kind of, they're Dave and I are against the windows, and then Shane and Dan are inside. And the year that they acquired the Mark Stone trade, I was staring at my phone, as you've seen a little bit of on this stream, and then I kind of let out slammed my fist on the
What
desk
happened
and
was scary.
was quite excited.
Yeah.
And that was the arrival of Mark Stone. I thought that was a great deal for the Golden Knights. So yeah, this is for sure a very different trade deadline compared to some of the ones we've seen in the past.
Interesting quote that caught my eye here from Colorado GM Joe Sakic. So the Avalanche the other day added Josh Manson from Anaheim, and today picked up Andrew Cogliano and Arturi Lehkonen. Interesting quote from Sakic. Felt that his team needed to be tougher to play against, that they got pushed around by the Golden Knights last year. You know, we all remember that great playoff series, 6-gamer. I remember over the summer, Gary, I think it was Gabe Landeskog was doing an interview with our colleagues at NHL Network, and somebody asked him, what did you learn from that series with Vegas? And he said the biggest thing that jumped out to him was we were not able to mentally be tough enough, mentally reset. You know, they get up 2-0 in that series, probably didn't deserve to win game 2, but they did. And then certainly when they lost game 5 at home, Mark Stone's goal, the breakaway, I think we kind of all felt that that was the end of the line for the Avalanche. So they felt like they had to be mentally a stronger team. And here you've got Joe Sakic saying we needed to be just flat out tougher to play against. And that's why I always kind of look, if the Golden Knights are going to be fairly quiet, which it appears, unless something changed dramatically, it's not going to be a very busy day for them. What do the other teams do that around them that, you know, to make themselves better, be it a Minnesota, a Calgary, or a Colorado, all in different scenarios, right? They don't have the litany of injuries the Golden Knights have, but all of those teams did make a variety of moves either today or in the days leading up to today.
Well, let me ask you this. You know, you're a general manager, you've spent all these assets and you're feeling really good about your team. And then, you know, the playoffs, Daryl Sutter made this comment the other day, you know, sneak in as a wild card team. Well, it's going to be a waste of 2 weeks, because you're going to have to go to Colorado in
8 days.
And waste of 8 days. That's a 4-game sweep.
Make it quick.
You're making it quick. Yeah, exactly. So, but if you're one of those GMs and as you know, as the rest of the regular season goes on, and if Vegas is able to hold on to the spot they have, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're able to put McNabb back in the lineup, and they're missing him. But let's talk. We'll get back to that in a second. But then they add Stone, and then they put Pacioretty back in, and then they put Leonard back in, and then maybe who knows about Martinez,
Riley
Smith, and then all of a sudden, you know, all the guys that are playing above their station start to slide down, and who knows how long this Logan Thompson run goes. I'd like to see what Daryl Sutter would say at the end of the regular season if that was the case. Now, and I do believe Vegas's best path is still to get in as one of the top 3 in the Pacific. They got to win some games to make that happen, but I think they can. We talk about Braden McNabb a lot.
Yeah, I mean, they're
how much are they missing him?
Huge. I mean, you know, the guy that usually sits next to me on TV that made this point the other day, Shane was talking about, you know, you looked at the Golden Knights penalty kill. Last game, they came out of it unscathed against the Kings. The previous 5, they had a lot of power play goal in every game. And you think about the amount of pucks Braden McNabb eats, blocks, how hard he is to play against. That's an element and you know, you take Nick Hague out of the mix too, but especially somebody like Braden McNabb, proven how hard he plays on a night and plays hard minutes on a night-to-night basis. It's been critical for them in terms of what, you know, some of the oil they've leaked on the penalty kill lately. And just back to the larger point, Gary, to me, it is going to come down to there's 7 regulars out right now. We all know who they are. Are they going to be able to get all of them back or a semblance of them back in time and enough time to make a push? They have no margin for error here down the stretch. Absolutely zero margin for error. At one point they did. They had a comfortable cushion. That's all gone now. So they've got, including tonight, 17 games to go. Can they get anybody of significance back in this lineup to help them make a push and try and secure a playoff spot?
Well, it has to come pretty soon, I would think. You know, they are playing better than they were when they lost those, like the last 2 games. The Florida game in particular, they were a lot better. I think they took a slide back against LA, still got the win. So they're going to have to be really good tonight to beat this Minnesota team. They've added Nick Delorier. Fleury will get off of Minnesota owner Craig Leopold has sent a private jet for him to Chicago. He'll get off that. He'll walk right in the dressing room, grab a marker, put some money on the board. That'll be the first thing he does before he even, goes to figure out where he's sitting in the locker room. So there's, Minnesota's going to be good tonight. Vegas is going to have to, they'll have to be on their toes to get 2 points tonight. McNabb, the penalty kill is one thing, but against LA, I was thinking this during the game, like they really set up camp a number of times in the offensive zone and kind of pinned the Golden Knights back there. Well, that's the kind of thing that he's really effective at breaking up because he's physical. He'll find a guy, he'll pin him, keep the puck there, and then wait for puck support, and they'll be able to crack it out and break up the opposition's cycle and forecheck. So again, this is kind of weird to be doing this without having heard anything from Kelly McCrimmon, because he may shed some light on some of this stuff for good reason. The Golden Knights have kept their injury prognosis as a whole to themselves. You don't want to give, you're trying to make trades or whatever you're doing. You don't want the opposition to know the situation that you're in. Well, Kyle Dubas and Kyle Davidson are having a little bit of a tiff on Twitter right now.
Yeah.
Kyle Dubas was interviewed, and they were asking him how far he got with Marc-Andre Fleury, and his response was that he wasn't very happy that got out in the news at all, and that's something that reporters should be asking Kyle Davidson about. And Kyle Davidson just spoke. He's the Chicago GM right now. And his response was, yeah, I'm aware of what Kyle has said, and that's something I'll be addressing with Kyle in the future in private. So a little Kyle on Kyle animosity out there.
It's funny, Gary, I just was jotting down for my own help, the 7 guys out. Okay. So Stone, Pacioretty, Smith, Martinez, Haig, McNabb, Leonard. We had a graphic we ran on television a few games ago that if you went back to the game in Calgary, the game the Golden Knights got handled with ease by the Flames 6-0. The game before in Edmonton was the last game Mark Stone played.
Yeah.
And they were at a point there where they were pretty close. Martinez was still out. Eichel had yet to play, right? But you had a feeling maybe they were, all right, they're going to get the band all together at once. And then the news the next day that Stone couldn't play. And I just felt, and it kind of hit me a bit late in that Winnipeg game last week. You mentioned that the blowout loss to the Jets, that, this most recent batch of injuries, they thought they might, perish the think they might get past it. And here they are, they get hit again. And as recently as a couple of games ago, before Howden and Janmark came back, they had 9 guys out. So just when you thought, they might be able to make a little progress there, they get hit with it again. So again, this has been the story all season. There really hasn't been much evidence for us to believe that they're going to get everybody back. You just have to, I guess you have to hope against hope, maybe, that's the case between now and the end of the regular season.
Yeah, the website Man Games Lost updated its standings points lost due to injuries today, and Vegas is over 30 points, 30.6 points. According to the formula they use, where they take the quality of the player, the injuries, the length of injuries, they put it all into some algorithm, and it spits out a number, and that's number 1 in the National Hockey League. Now, Vegas has how many points today, Dave, in the standings?
They are at 72.
72. You add 30, and that's unreasonable because that they weren't ever going to be entirely healthy. If you added 30, that gets them to
over 100.
Yeah, well,
over 102.
Exactly. They're first place in the West.
In the league.
Let's go to 20. Let's get them to 92.
Yeah.
Right. Even at a third, add 10 points, and they're at 82, and they're comfortably in the picture in the Pacific. So I've read a lot of things and seen a lot of things, and to gloss over the injuries and sort of say, someone said today, Vegas is a mess. Well, Vegas is been affected by injuries more than any other team in the National Hockey League this year. So if you want to call that a mess, it's a pretty unsophisticated take from this perspective, from this seat, but that's the story of the season so far.
Yeah, no question. And it started. It's easy to say it was started in the second game against LA. It started in the preseason.
Yeah,
They had guys from the preseason that got started nicked up, and they've never. That's never really stopped.
they didn't have Tuck right off the start, right? He
Exactly.
was unavailable to them after the surgery in the offseason. Now they traded him, but they traded him and a healthy Peyton Krebs for a superstar in Jack Eichel. I think you make that trade all day long, but Jack wasn't healthy. So the injuries have been the story. And I also think, I think Pete DeBoer has done a really great job keeping them in it to this point. Where they go from here, hopefully they go on a run. It would be really fun to see them get healthy and find out what they could do, because the caliber of players that McCrimmon and McPhee have assembled is right there near the top of the NHL. So, but they got to get healthy to find out. We also forget, there's been some really good stories this year in terms of, let's talk about Brett Howden and how he has developed. And Nick Waugh has taken another step yet again as a player. So maybe we're seeing something from Logan Thompson that is going to be a real bright spot. I'd like to see them get healthy.
Couple of and they haven't had the team they envisioned all year long.
No.
Even from the Eichel trade forward, they haven't had that group. Pacioretty, Eichel, and Stone have not been together once. Couple of more things, guys, before we send it back. I remember mentioning, Gary, before they went on that last road trip, so just the most recent one: Philly, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Columbus, Winnipeg. 4 of those 5 teams were out of the playoffs at the time. 4 of the 5 are still out of the playoffs at the time. Golden Knights took an offer on that trip. 11 of their last 12 losses have been in regulation. So they haven't been even grab the loser point.
Yeah.
Right? Grab a shootout
Can't get
loss.
that.
Whatever. Those are some of the crucial points that have kind of flown out the window on them. But my point being, when you're going through what they've gone through health-wise, whether you're playing Buffalo or Colorado or a team in between, let's just say Minnesota, it doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't really matter, but it's going to be a battle every night.
For sure.
When you've got that amount of talent and that amount of money out of your lineup. So you look at it, so now they're looking to win on the road again. They've lost every game on that last 5-game trip. But regardless of opponent, when you're going through that, it makes it an uphill race.
I'm going to throw this thing away.
Okay, good. There you go.
It's doing nothing.
This is quiet. It's all quiet here.
Did you hear Millard say to Elliott he was going to pull rank on him?
Yeah. Yep.
Someone needs to remind Darren with 1 R that Darren with 2 R's was a goalie in the NHL. Not an e-bug. Not an e-bug. He was an actual goalie in the National Hockey League.
Hey, Darren Millard, were you out? Did you have to skate today? Did they put you through your paces at CNA today?
No, they've got other people to do that. I was working today. They asked, and I said, I've got the live stream.
I've got the trade deadline show going.
Then I've got the game.
We could have waited to start it till now,
I don't think we'll be missing much.
I told them I'm available about 9:30 tonight. If you want to hold off and skate, then we can do that.
It's all quiet here, guys. I guess unless that changes, we'll chat with you.
Couple of things.
Nothing really
Couple of things. One, beautiful job, because that picture behind you, that was a blank canvas when we arrived this morning, and Gary's been working on that leading up to it. So well done, Gary.
Paint by numbers.
Had no idea. Paint by numbers. Is that what it is? I think you missed on the number 3 a little
I'm a man
bit.
of the arts.
St. Paul Cathedral mallet.
And I just want to set up a little conversation between Elliott and Lawless, because there's a slight difference of opinion just on the last 2 games. Because Lawman, you thought there may have been a step back against LA, and Elliott liked the game against LA more than Florida. So, Lawman, I'll let you go first, and just because I'm curious. 2 guys that watch as much hockey as anybody, and wins, and you saw different things. So, Gary, give me a little assessment.
I just didn't think that the shot suppression was there against LA like it was against Florida. Thompson faced a barrage. I think the shots at one point in time were like 18-3 in the 3rd period. He eventually faced more than 40, and LA did a really good job. Now, maybe it's just a difference in styles. That
Sure,
Florida's a
it
little
is.
bit more of a team on the rush, LA established a lot of zone time. They were able to establish their forecheck and cycle the puck. In particular, in the second period, they did a ton of that. They had with the first goal, they basically had the puck in the zone for about 45 seconds before they cashed in. And these are things that Pete DeBoer commented on after the game on Saturday as well.
Yeah, and as much as they had all those shots and the suppression wasn't there, a lot of those shots were from the outside. I thought they did a good job of boxing out in front of their own net, not allowing second chances off of all those shots, and that Logan Thompson had real good sight lines, and that's why he was able to really lock in and have quiet feet and get to the spot and make the saves early. I was looking at our side more, our fourth line. I really liked the fact that they wanted to grind. There was a grind element to the game for all four lines, but in particular that fourth line, Howden and Amadio and Colasar. I think that element has to be there the rest of the way for them to be successful. And I think you're right, Gary. Part of it is two different styles. Florida so much on the rush. Our neutral zone was excellent against Florida. In zone against LA Kings, I think they did a good job of keeping to the outside, but they did spend too much time in their own zone.
Also, you just said quiet feet about Thompson. He stayed inside the iron all game long.
Yep.
He didn't wander. His rebound control was excellent, and his teammates did a nice job sweeping everything away from him. There were not a lot of shots after he was forced to move or make a save, which is, when most goals are scored in the National Hockey League. So that aspect of the game was really good. The other part that I really liked, Nolan Patrick got angry in that game, which is something we have not seen from him yet. He took a couple of big runs at LA forwards, threw some big checks, and then at the end of the game was involved in a kerfuffle, cross-checked a couple of the Kings. And Steve Larmer used to always say, when you're a star player, people are going to take runs at you. Every once in a while, be unpredictable and make sure someone gets a Sherwood sandwich every 20 or 30 games. So other guys around the league know, if you're going to take a run at me, I'm going to make sure that you leave a few teeth on the ice on the skating away. Now the game has changed a lot, but Nolan Patrick, with the injuries he's had and as big a guy as he has, if he protects himself a little bit, I don't think that's a bad thing at all.
Just one quick note, guys. Pete DeBoer told us this morning that he told Nolan Patrick this. Thought his two best games of the year were the last two games of the road trip in Columbus and Winnipeg. So, that is another player. As much as we talk about all the players that are out injured, he missed, obviously, 40 games total this year with injuries. Is he somebody that could be a difference maker? I think you've got to hope that, the best is still ahead for Nolan Patrick as a guy that was really highly touted and has had the battle. We know what he's had to battle. Could he emerge as a guy they can rely on to provide some offense and drive some offense down the stretch?
He's starting to get a shot off, which we didn't see that. We saw him do. He does a lot of smart things along the wall, does smart things defensively. That's his hockey sense is his best skill for sure. But he also has some high-end offense as well. And if he could ever unlock that, that could be a real interesting addition for the Golden Knights down the stretch as well.
And I like Brett Howden. I heard his name, saw him a little bit over the course of the last several years. He's seemingly carving out a very important role on this team. He, to me, plays that quote-unquote playoff-style hockey. You could see him being a factor once the playoffs begin.
Yeah, you'd hope so, Darren. And it's Pete DeBoer had mentioned, look, he got off to a slow start, camp, then got hurt, then missed time. And then I think it took him a while to kind of find his game with a new team. Got hurt again, but now after missing 7 games, he's been noticeable since he's been back in the lineup.
Duva and I were talking about him a lot last week, and in Saturday's game, it sort of came to me. He is just like the misfits from year one. You think about it; he's a first-round pick. 2 organizations have given up on him. And now he finds himself with the Golden Knights and has battled to get a little bit of opportunity. But once he started to show what he could do, DeBoer is giving him more and more opportunity. and he's. I said he was, a pure misfit, not an original misfit, and Duva said he is a misfit 2.0 or Generation 2 misfit, which is I thought was quite clever on Dan's part.
Well, we'll leave it there because that was the most overrated disagreement that I've ever heard of between you two.
You were trying.
I was trying to set it up to get something going there, and it just fizzled out.
Well, you started it all with your I'm going to pull rank, and then you were trying to get away from that and get Elliot and I to disagree, when really you should have just said, I apologize for that egregious comment.
I'm always trying to climb up the ladder, Gary, and I don't care who I step on when I go through that. Just put some shoulder pads on because I may be stepping on your shoulders soon. There's Dave Gosher and Gary Lawless at the Lexington Room in St. Paul, Minnesota, where the Minnesota Wild will host the Vegas Golden Knights tonight. We're back in Studio 31. If you have questions, log on. Let us know as you watch this 2022 Trade Deadline live stream presented by Allegiant. We've got a couple of questions in the queue, but just want to show, because we've been talking so much about all the injuries and where Vegas has been. Gary talked about points lost because of injury and how it's 30 points, but look at this graphic. And one, it's beautiful.
Right. Really well done.
That is art. No offense to Gary Lawless and his painting at the Lexington Room. But man games lost to injury, you see that 365. And that first graph, what stands out is Vegas is the only team in a playoff position there.
The one on the left, the man games lost to injury. Again, anecdotal. I don't have the research in front of me, but I've done this for such a long time. It's usually teams that are out of the playoff mix. The bottom teams always lead this category. And it makes sense because you have guys coming in and out of the lineup, playing out of position, playing up in the lineup, more prone to injury. So that does stand out that Vegas is on that one. And on the second one, the cap hit, well, we know Montreal, you had Carey Price, their goaltender, and you had their captain as well out the whole time in Shea Weber. So they've been out the whole season. Weber just came back. So that's kind of skews that graphic. It's correct, but Montreal wouldn't nearly be leading either category without those two players missing most of the season.
So then you get into to Vegas. And it also speaks to what Pittsburgh did at the start of the year without their two superstars in Malkin and Crosby. But that's a huge number to be out of the lineup salary.
Those are numbers that you can actually verify, unlike Gary's
You didn't like the
model
formula?
Well, 30 points, that's a lot.
That was a lot. Puts you at 102. But, yeah, I mean, you start getting into some of those formulas and peeling them back. There's the projection that it's going to take Vegas 94 points to make the playoffs. So will it be 96? Will it be 92?
Which is really meaningful.
It is. Well, that's like 10 points in the 102 to 92. But it's an inexact science.
Right.
What we do know is that they've lost some one-goal games or games that on that road trip where they were all there in the third period.
Right.
And they weren't able to take advantage of it, the 4 of the 5. And when you aren't able to lean on as many players as Vegas can't right now, it impacts the standings, and they may have lost 8 points out of 10 on that road trip because of the injuries.
Yeah, they were in those winnable situations. It turned out, just like we said, my term always is you're playing just well enough to lose, instead of the first half where you had the situation where you were finding ways to win. And the difference between that, sometimes it's personnel, sometimes it's just the fact that you've had to extend guys beyond their true, if you will, placement in the lineup for too long.
And if you're wondering, when we talk about this, Gary and Dave are still listening to the program. I know that because Gary's texting me his formula and where he got it from, because he does. Don't blame him. It's the Twitter site that came up with that. Man Games Lost NHL. So
That's okay.
All right.
The guys out there doing that.
I'll drive a
exclusively.
wedge between you guys yet. This is Trade Deadline 2022, so the fifth go-around for the Vegas Golden Knights and the management crew. George McPhee was the general manager at the start. Now it's Kelly McCrimmon who's taken over the reins the last few. Let's take a look at what the Vegas has done in previous trade deadlines, and they've all kind of been different because you get through this stage, and we had a stoppage, and then last year 56 games, and this year getting back to an 82-game schedule. Most recently, Matthias Janmark comes over from Chicago. The year before the pause, it was Nick Cousins, Robin Lehner, and Alec Martinez, two of those three players still with the hockey club. 2019, year number 2, the acquisition of Mark Stone, and then the contract extension, and in year number 1, part of the group that went to the Stanley Cup final, Ryan Reeves and Tomas Tatar. So there's always been some kind of ad at the trade deadline. The most active, though, was that 2020 group coming off the change in coaches and then going into the bubble.
It made complete sense. You needed some stability and veteran leadership on the blue line. You get Alec Martinez from the LA Kings, and Robin Lehner comes in because Marc-Andre Fleury's play had dropped off. That was what tragically lost his father. Was so good the first half. Couldn't find his game after that. We're all human. Robin Lehner comes in and gives them exactly what they'd hoped.
And a little more depth with Malcolm Subban unable to produce points the way that they needed to.
Yeah, well, that was the whole point. It's like we don't have a goaltender in Malcolm Subban at the time that we had confidence in that could get us enough points. And even if they were not so much struggling to get in the playoffs. Once you get in the playoffs, if you don't have that kind of elite goaltending, you're probably not going very far.
Questions and comments coming in. Let's check out Vegas Born Hockey on Twitch, asking what was the most underrated trade in VGK history. There's a couple that kind of jump out at you.
Yeah, there's been some really good evaluation of what would have been considered depth guys or secondary talent. Mm-hmm. Chandler Stevenson comes to mind.
5th round pick.
Nick Waugh comes to mind.
That was Eric Holla, and a pick that one was interesting because you're trading an NHL player for a player that was in the American Hockey League Championship Series that year, beat your American League team in the final, so they saw all kinds of eyes right on Nick Waugh, and the forecast there, and I mean, he bounced back and forth the first year and then now has become a really solid National Hockey League player.
Big part of this team, big part of this group, and he continues to evolve his game, holding onto the puck much better in the offensive zone and getting to the net more regularly. But yeah, that's just knowing what kind of player you're looking at and what the needs are and what the fits are of your roster. It's just not willy-nilly. We're going to look for the best players all the time. Hockey teams aren't built that way for a lot of reasons, Cap being one of them. But they saw a guy in the American League, and to project what he can do for you doesn't happen very often. That's a tale that everybody in the American Hockey League is telling one another. Remember Nick Waugh, right? You're always playing for someone.
Well, he was a top draft pick in junior,
right?
And then they
fell out of favor.
Just couldn't crack the big club lineup.
Right.
What do you see him when he settles in? Is there more there offensively?
I think you're seeing a lot of it this year. I mean, I think the one thing, he had long gaps. When he goes cold, he goes frigid. Mm-hmm. So he's going to get better at finding ways to pick up points so he's more consistent in terms of his production. But on a championship team, that's a bona fide third line center that can do a lot of things for you.
And the Chandler Stevenson trade, that's where I would go if you're talking about underrated. It happened mid-season. They acquire some depth, a player that was playing down the lineup in Washington. Those of us that had followed junior knew of Chandler's game and high-end speed,
right?
But it hadn't projected on a Stanley Cup championship team in Washington. For him to develop the chemistry, because he was not acquired to center Max Pacioretty and Mark Stone. He got in there because of injury and the opportunity and took advantage of it. But that whole acquisition and progression and development was unforeseen from a lot of us.
Yeah, and I would, I've never talked to the guys that measure those kinds of things in the organization. They're obviously very pleased. I don't know if they might even be surprised, but it was one of those situations where, as a trio with Pacioretty and Stone, Stevenson in the middle, it all kind of made sense. And now the big part this year was the fact that those two guys were out of the lineup and he continued to produce. So he kind of made his name, prove that it wasn't just because he was playing with, two elite wingers. But man, when they're together, the three of them and healthy, I think they bring out the best in one another.
Jack Eichel right now is the team's #1 center and deserves that spot. We'll get back to Gary Lawless and Dave Gaucher in a second to get their thoughts on this. But the other day, because he had the injury with the hand and he was doubtful to play, and he came in
upper body.
Yeah, upper body. He didn't take any faceoffs in that game.
Right.
But we saw the ability to distribute the puck was high end.
So you again, when you follow and cover the league from a different vantage point, you see a player, periodically, watch him on TV. I kind of knew. I saw Eichel at the National Development Team program as well when he was there. And I just always remember him having the puck, straight line speed, get to a spot, shoot. I didn't remember him as the two things that have impressed me the most: his ability to play in traffic and hang on to the puck. And what you just talked about, it's like, I can't remember him ever being a passer, even though he said to us he considers himself a passer first, and you can see it. He zips the puck around. He's always looking for that next play that doesn't involve a shot on goal. So potentially it could have been his situation in Buffalo. He just felt that he had to shoot to score. Don't get me wrong. He's still not shy to shoot, but
nor should he be, right?
No, nor should he be. He has a tremendous wrist shot. But those two things, the ability to play in traffic and distribute the puck, pleasantly surprised. Didn't know he was that good at it. No wonder they think he's, one of the best players in the game.
And his release gets a lot of focus because it's so deceptive. But that goes into pass too. He can hide what he's going to do with that puck.
And he's
his feet, the way he skates
unique.
is unique.
And he's unique in a lot of regards. He plays at the end of very upright skater. Holds the puck out far away from him. So like lots of times he'll pull it in, change angle to shoot, or he's out here and just with the wrists, boom, the puck's gone on a pass. So he's a lot of deception to his game from a lot of aspects. And you mentioned his skating as well. His elite and deceptive.
Quicker and doesn't look like he's trying to skate quickly.
Well, right. His inside edges are so good. He's one of those few players, the way I describe it. Paul Coffey was like this. Very few in all elite skaters. Guys that seem like they're accelerating and they're not striding. They're gliding to the naked eye, but yet it's the work of their inside edges on their ankles that is still propelling them forward. And Jack Eichel is one of the best I've seen.
Can you imagine if they hadn't made that deal, where they would be? I mean, Tuck would be available, but that center ice position has become really key, and having a top guy to be able to carry
and people that know his game say, well, we haven't scratching the surface, which after 16 games and neck surgery and an upper body injury, that kind of makes sense.
Almost finished your sentence there for you.
Spending some time together.
A little bit. We got the pregame show coming up at 4:30, and then just after 5 o'clock Pacific, Dave Gaucher and Shane Knighty will have the call. Dave Gaucher standing by at the Lexington Room in St. Paul, Minnesota. One last check-in with Dave and Gary Lawless. Just talking, if you guys want to pick up, not trying to tell you what to talk about, but just Jack Eichel and what we're seeing as the progression of Jack's career with the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, it seems to have gotten better every game, guys. I think that I don't think you can underestimate a couple of things. One is the amount of time he missed. Two is he's jumping into games in the middle of a playoff push for most of the rest of the league, right? Or at least the teams that they need to make a push. And even if you're out of it, everyone's always playing for something. So I think he's probably dealing with a little bit of that. But we've seen his, some of the elite level talent he's able to bring to the table. He's had a revolving door of wingers since he's got back in the lineup. Most recently, it's been They've had to put William Karlsson on the wing with Jonathan Marchessault on the other side. There's no question he's playing through something, right? He took that shot off the hand from Uyghur the other day. Pete DeBoer even said, look, guys, this time of year, we'll play through pain. And he's obviously shown he's willing to do that. I would imagine it would take something enormously significant to keep him out of the lineup, considering all the time he's missed. But he is a guy that you hope he's just kind of scratched the surface, and we've seen in years past just what an elite level player he can be, Gary.
I'm going to read this, Dave.
Sure.
We cannot confirm this. We have no confirmation of this from Kelly McCrimmon, but sources. This is from Emily Kaplan of ESPN.com. ESPN. Anaheim and Vegas agreed to a deal in principle that includes sending Evgeny Dadonov to the Ducks. Believe the trade is in the queue at Central Registry. Cap clearance for VGK. That's from Emily Kaplan of ESPN. We cannot confirm that. So, but that would be, would suggest that the thing that we've been talking about all show long is that Kelly McCrimmon is in a position where he's about to start to reintegrate some of his own players into his lineup. And you went back to that Edmonton game where before they lost Mark Stone's last game. At that point in time, the whole conversation surrounding the Vegas Golden Knights was they were going to have to be sellers at the deadline because they didn't have cap space to bring Jack Eichel back in. And then they went through all of these injuries. And I think that kind of, probably put McCrimmon in a place where he had to figure out, okay, who's going to finish the season. And Pete DeBoer said last week that there was some ambiguity in the diagnosis of some of the players. In particular, that was Pacioretty, Smith, and Leonard, I believe.
Right.
And the players were going to have to skate at some point in time, and then they would be able to figure out some more to find some clarity on those injuries. Well, maybe this cap clearance, if it's accurate, is a signal that they do have that clarity, and it looks like they're going to start to get some of their own players back healthy. And frankly, there's no Mark Stones available on the market. There are no Alec Martinez's. He was available a few years ago, but no one like him got moved in terms of blue liners. Ben Sherratt, the biggest. Hampus Lindholm to the Bruins. That would be the biggest name, and he's a lot like Alec Martinez in that he's a two-way player. There's no Max Pacioretty's available, and no Robin Leonard's available for that matter as well. So if that is indeed what we're going to see in the next little while, the return of these players, then Kelly McCrimmon will have done not a ton at the trade deadline, but a ton to have gotten this group of players together, and maybe he's going to be smiled upon with some good fortune for once, which has not happened this year at all on the injury front.
Well, for Dadonov too, Gary, he had just started to heat up lately, right? 5 goals in his last 7. Now the joke would be he had heated up just in time to get traded. And we don't know if this is the case or not. This has kind of been floating in the air today for the last couple of hours that he may be on the move. He has next year left at $5 million on his contract. Of course, came over in the Nick Holden trade from Ottawa in the offseason. This year he's had stretches. He just ended a stretch recently. I think it was 16 or 17 games where he had not scored. But lately he had taken a turn for the better. So we'll see if, in fact, this is the case. But it's something that's just kind of been around today. If they were going to make a move, would it be to free up space? And if this turns out to be the case, that would give an indication that they do hope that they might be able to get some players back and are going to need that space financially to bring guys off the IR and then back onto the active roster.
Yeah, well, I don't have the ability to do the math, first of all, nor do I have the numbers right in front of me. So whether or not this is enough to bring everybody back, I don't know if that's the case. I think it is. I think that would probably clear up enough room to get everyone that is out back in, and maybe some tinkering in terms of some guys on waivers, and maybe going with a bit of a shorter roster for a little while until the playoffs.
And worth a reminder, playoffs come around, no salary cap. Tampa Bay Lightning, Nikita Kucherov last year, but the big but in this, they have to get there first.
Yeah, that's the key here is
Yeah.
getting in, because if you get in, like, maybe not everyone's available on day one, but then all of a sudden maybe you get a guy halfway through the first round, or if you win the first round, halfway through the second round, or whatever. Health is, well, I've told you this story a bunch of times. I got to do a project we're in Minnesota with Bud Grant, the legendary Vikings football coach, and then was also played for the Lakers in the NBA, played for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and then coached the Blue Bombers. Great athlete. We were talking about the best quality in a player, and he looked at me, and I thought he was going to say speed or power, durability. He said if the player is hurt all the time, he's of no use. He said the players that are healthy all the time, they're the best players of all. So hopefully Vegas gets healthy.
Yeah. Earl Weaver, the late great manager of the Baltimore Orioles, used to say, I deal with the living. Kind of a crude way to put it, but you might get to a case, and we don't know this, you may not see Eichel, Pacioretty, and Stone together until the playoffs. If they get to the playoffs, right? As a line, you might not see them together.
That's your line.
Well, I'm just throwing it out there. Those three guys,
Yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty good.
They haven't been together
Yeah.
yet. So, but as they say, guys, so it's been a quiet day, quite obviously. And, I'm not sure if that's too much of a big surprise, considering the spot the Golden Knights are in with the cap and also with these injuries, and to use the phrase, the word, the ambiguity perhaps with some of these guys. But it looks like, if anything, this might be the move they make today. Not yet confirmed, but it has been kind of put out there of Evgeny Dadonov potentially going to Anaheim.
Love the assessment. Like if they don't take anything back other than maybe a pick, then it means that there could be some bright signs ahead for the roster and getting healthy. That's an amazing angle. Love it. Dave Gosher, Gary Lawless, get back to work. Preparations for tonight's game. We'll check in with you on the AT&T side a little bit later on.
See you guys.
Okay, guys. We'll see you.
Dave Gosher, take that painting too. Make sure that Gary doesn't forget that. Well done. Gary Lawless will be on Lawless in Order tonight in between the second and the third with a little bit more information on what happens on the trade deadline. Emily Kaplan reporting that Evgeny Dadonov is going to be dealt to the Ducks, but the trade is in the queue, and everything backs up as all the last-minute trades come together in the National Hockey League. There's a trade call and central registry in the National Hockey League, and everything has to be dotted and the T's crossed.
Do they still use a fax machine?
They don't do that. There has been a couple of trades that were stuck
ago.
in the fax machine and didn't get through. But the important thing, and why teams won't announce anything until the trade call is made, is because there's used to be, you make a trade, it's fine, you could release it because it's going to go through. But with central registry, they have to do all the math with the salary cap and make sure everything goes through. And there have been trades with different teams that have been rejected, and you have to go back and you rework it. So you're not going to announce anything until that. But we do have the indication that a trade has been made, and if they don't take anything back, that's $5 million off the books for the rest of this year, or the prorated, and then $5 million off the cap for next year, which may help you in some regard with some of your decisions moving forward.
Yeah, and I guess that was always looming, that we're going to have to clear some space to get everybody, quote unquote, healthy back in the lineup at once. Until that happens, it's been a juggling act, but maybe and hopefully that's an excellent sign.
Well, Kelly McCrimmon's going to stop by after they complete all their business, and guests joining us on the 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live stream presented by Allegiant. Guests joining us will be front and center talking about what the implications are of these trades. And Kelly's angle is, as the general manager, is trying to fit in under the cap and making sure that you've got a healthy enough team to participate in the Stanley Cup playoffs if you qualify. That's a delicate balancing act right now. And the most important thing will be not just the trade, if there is one, but the status of the roster that's out of the lineup right now.
And it's been like that. We thought we were, as an organization, there. We talked about that win in Edmonton and where they were 4 points up, first place in the Pacific Division. And with that next game, 6-0 loss to Calgary, it was it was a tough, all the way through the most recent road trip, a real tough segment, for the organization, and like 4-11-2 or something like that in that stretch, and everybody caught up that was behind you, and people passed you that had more games in hand. And that's the other part right now in terms of standings. They're precarious from the standpoint that with tonight's game, they'll have played more games. The Vegas Golden Knights will have played more games than anybody else. So there's teams in and around who you're battling for playoff positioning who have games in hand.
Guest will join us, presented by IGT. Kelly McCrimmon, the general manager of the Vegas Golden Knights, is scheduled to stop by Studio 31 following the conclusion of the trade call, and Emily Kaplan is reporting that the Vegas Golden Knights have made a deal involving the Anaheim Ducks, and it's reported to center around Evgeny Dodonov, who has been great as of late. And it's interesting. The other day, the San Jose Sharks and Florida Panthers played a game, and Frank Vetrano scored a goal in the third period and then won it in overtime for the Florida Panthers, and then was told the next day that he was traded to the New York Rangers. And this is a similar situation.
Very much so.
Dodonov just broke out recently and has been largely influential on the 2 wins as of late.
5 goals in his last 7 games. Didn't have a point in 14 straight. A point. Mm-hmm. That's cold. Like that's frostbite, right? He just couldn't find any offense. And there were a lot of guys out of the lineup, and you were looking for him to drive it. Guess what? 7 games, 22 shots on goal. Now you're feeling it. And that sometimes the shots on goal per player doesn't tell you much. But when a guy's struggling and, okay, now he's had 4 shots on goal, nothing really happened. Got an assist. Oh, good. Offense gets in a rhythm. Boom. And Dodonov did just that recently. Got into a flow, got into a rhythm, scoring the power play, feeling it, getting pucks to the net, and has been scoring at a good clip.
Riley Smith was the name that a lot of the national media really focused on. His absence from the lineup right now, you've documented it.
Yeah.
It's bigger than what the conversation has really paid to it.
I think so. On the penalty kill, certainly we talked about McNabb, but up front, I mean, there's no better tandem in the league at killing penalties than William Karlsson and Riley Smith. You miss Smith, so you miss it 5-on-5, the misfits line. Now they're kind of scrambled. Now, mind you, the other 2 guys are playing with Jack Eichel, and they've been pretty good. William Karlsson moving to the wing, pretty good. Oh, by the way, he had to take all the faceoffs, so he's only a winger by name. The way it's set up right now. So, yeah, I think Riley Smith is, again, he's like 16 goals. He's had moments where he's had long stretches where he wasn't effective that way, but he's always a competent player, even when he's not scoring. So, and a big part of this team, they miss him. There's no doubt about it.
It's crazy how you do caution people, like, be careful who you're listening to and where it's coming from, because almost instantly after the acquisition of Jack Eichel was made,
right,
people started looking at the salary cap and contracts and who was didn't have a deal for next year, term, and trying to figure out what would be. And we all default to, like water. It finds the easiest path, the most direct path. We look at that, and there is so much emphasis that Riley Smith wouldn't be part of this team after March 21st. And according to reports now, he will be there. He's injured out of the lineup at this case right now and hasn't played in the last 6. But Kelly McCrimmon, like
unless there's another trade down further in the queue past the reported Dodonov trade. Yeah, you would say that Riley Smith's with the club, but still ailing.
Well, let's take a look at the standings. So where we are right now going into the National Hockey League play tonight, and the Calgary Flames in the Pacific Division have just surpassed all expectations. Where they were a year ago, the coaching change, and didn't exactly gain a lot of momentum from that, but they figured some things out in the sense of evaluations and put in a foundation. And that's been just one of the incredible stories, along with the LA Kings being in second spot in the Pacific Division right now, probably ahead of schedule from where they anticipated. And Vegas with those 72 points, 2 points behind Edmonton and 4 points back of the LA Kings. Top position, home ice advantage is still certainly there for the Golden Knights going into this doubleheader in Minnesota and against the Winnipeg Jets. And then they have Nashville on Thursday. So you look at those standings, you can put Winnipeg some separation between you, the two teams there. And we also have Minnesota in there, but they're in the Central Division right now.
They have the same point total as Nashville, 76 points.
76. Yeah. So this series, Minnesota, Winnipeg, and then Nashville on Thursday back at the T-Mobile is a huge week.
It is. I mean, and we're going to find different reasons and different ways to say the same thing, that the next game is a huge game. Mm-hmm. They are. I mean, right there, because of where you are in the standings, who your opponent is. You've been really good, Vegas Golden Knights, against the Pacific Division, 12-5-1, but you only play 8 of your 18 against the Pacific the rest of the way. It's outside that, mostly in the Central, where you've struggled a little bit more. And you can see that some of those teams are going to factor in potentially. If you can't climb into the Pacific top 3, you're going to be battling with those Central Division teams for wildcards placement.
I tried to get you and Gary to disagree to great length, and it didn't get to where I wanted it to, just from an entertainment standpoint. But what did you really like about the Golden Knights game against Los Angeles that you think is possible to carry over to these next two games?
Well, the grind, first of all. Like, if you can roll your 4 lines the way they're constituted right now, although with the Donoff out, where does that go?
Yeah.
Right? If that ends up being the case. So I like that against a Minnesota team. They give up shots, so you can get to the net. So that part can carry forward. The second thing is special teams. You can win that special teams battle against a Minnesota team that has really struggled on the penalty kill over almost a full quarter of a season, giving up a power play goal in 16 of the last 19 games. So those two elements can carry forward. And then the third, you're hoping that the goaltender, youngster Logan Thompson, continues his ascent and fine play. Those 3 things are there. I'm liking our chances.
When does he reach the stage where you kind of know what you're going to expect from night to night? How many games does he have to play?
Well, again, before you can make something that definitive, there has to be a track record. Now, because you're going to say it's like a 10-game stretch where he just goes 8-1-1. I'm liking that.
Can you do that again?
So if that's the case, what are you going to be thinking? Okay, that's what we can always expect, or when does the glass slipper fall off Cinderella? Right? So it's going to take a while, a body of work, probably 50, 75 games where you can say, I know what kind of goaltender he is. He can play this many games before it starts to drop off. Right now, you're just going to go every single night, hope for the best.
Yeah, you're right now. You're saying, let's try and have lightning in a bottle.
Just keep it going, and the guys in front of him, it's like, hey, let's let him see everything. Box out, give him good sight lines, and we know he's going to battle. That, I think that resonates with the locker room an awful lot. That his battle, his compete in the blue paint inside his crease for loose pucks is phenomenal. It's fun to watch. And the guys really respect a goalie he's in the battle like they are.
And they're going to face a team tonight in the Minnesota Wild that arguably made the biggest trade today in acquiring Marc-Andre Fleury from the Chicago Blackhawks. They traded Kaapo Kähkönen to the San Jose Sharks. So Sharks get a goaltender that they hope they can build around for the future, because he is a good prospect. Yep. But Minnesota's tandem is now the All-Star and Cam Talbot, who was in Vegas for the All-Star festivities, and Marc-Andre Fleury, the reigning Vezina Trophy winner. Is tonight a tough game for a team like Minnesota with all of that swirling around them? Because apparently Marc-Andre is going to be there to back up tonight. So there's going to be a lot of handshakes, meeting, and so forth. I mean, they're in a battle, and they've won their last 2 games, and maybe they figured it out, just like Vegas is hoping that they're on the track right now. But I'm just curious from a distraction and focus standpoint, where do you think, and can you take advantage of a team like Minnesota?
You can, because Cam Talbot of anybody is going to have, I would say, the most doubt. He was just an all-star, and now he's an also-ran that quickly, potentially, on the same team.
So you think this could be a difficult game or a challenging game? Like you also
mentally,
got that.
he's a veteran.
I'm going to stick it to show you guys.
Absolutely, but again, okay, you're going to do that for that game. Maybe that'll do it. But you just lost your net, regardless how well you play. I think that it'll be a mental barrier for Cam Talbot to overcome. Now, he's done that many times in his career. Especially talking about a longer road. Right. I mean, there's a guy, University of Huntsville, Alabama. So he knows that he's had some rough patches along the way to get to here. So he should be able to handle it, but he's human too.
We do the starting goaltenders on every pregame show on AT&T Sportsnet. It will be a fascinating conversation tonight after 4:30 when we talk about Logan Thompson on one side and Cam Talbot on the other, and the backups could be the guys that step in and carry the load the next game. We don't really know.
And so you asked the question, and Cam Talbot's a good study. He was a backup with Lundqvist.
Lundqvist, yeah.
And he was unreal in that 22, 24 games that he got to play. Then he upped the ante and was a good starter once he got moved. Nobody knew that.
Edmonton, yeah.
Right. So you were like, do you know what to expect? When did we know what to expect from Cam Talbot? Halfway through that Edmonton season, maybe, even though he'd had success somewhere else in a different role. So it takes a while to where people can lock in and go, that's who that person or that's who that goaltender is, plus or minus.
There's 7 players out of the lineup, and I hate to throw this at you right now, but like Stone, Martinez, Pacioretty, Smith, McNabb, Haig, Leonard, they're all super valuable in their own way. Some are superstars,
right,
and some are just really so valuable. And like Martinez is that player. I think he's a star on this team and can do so much for you, from penalty killing to power play, and then give you just the defensive game. But if you're going to make a run at this thing, like do you have to have all 7 back? Do you have to get at least 5 of them back?
Depends which 5, but I would say, and then what version of the player are you getting back?
Yeah.
You don't know, right? They're not going to come in and be, fully acclimated. Pacioretty did that once this year. Mm-hmm. Came back, was crazy good. But if you look, you have 3 of your top 6 defensemen out.
And your 2 top wingers. Or 3 with Riley Smith.
Right. So
Stone and Pacioretty.
Right. So 3 top wingers, 3 guys, and then your goaltender. So it's not how it collectively. It's not like, okay, well, Pacioretty is better than this guy. It's like your top line is compromised, your back end you're missing 50%, and your starting goaltender is unavailable. So that's a lot. So I would say it's a cumulative effect rather than how many do you need back? You need them all back.
We want to tell you that there's some trades in the queue. So we're a couple hours past the National Hockey League trade deadline, and we came on the air saying that there was going to be some trades still to be announced, and we ran through a bunch of that. We're 2 hours past, and we're told that there's some reporting that's taking place from Emily Kaplan that the Vegas Golden Knights have swung a deal with the Anaheim Ducks, and it revolves around Evgeny Dodonov. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll give you just a lay of the land of what to expect, because Kelly McCrimmon is scheduled to join us here in Studio 31 on this live stream for the 2022 NHL Trade Deadline presented by Allegiant. We'll give you an update on where we sit from a scheduling standpoint, and remember, we do have a game tonight, pregame show on Fox Sports Las Vegas, 4 o'clock, ahead of the Minnesota Wild and the Vegas Golden Knights, 4:30 on AT&T Sportsnet, and then we'll get you into the game at 5 o'clock. But we'll be right back with just an update for you on where we are in the trade queue and when to expect General Manager Kelly McCrimmon on the 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live stream presented by Allegiant.
Your heating and cooling system goes down, or you find a huge leak. It's time to call Yes Air Conditioning and Plumbing. With more than 50 service trucks to cover the valley, we're always ready to help you 24 hours a day. Our technicians are highly trained to handle any plumbing or HVAC challenges in your home. In fact, they do their job so well, you may never see them again. Visit theyesmancan.com to schedule an appointment today.
My daughter Dana fought a long battle with Crohn's disease before passing last year. Max has spent a lifetime scoring goals.
It's our goal to help the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation find a cure for this horrible disease, so no one else's child has to suffer like Dana did.
Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis may be unfamiliar to you, but there are currently over 3 million Americans suffering from both. Join Max and I in scoring our goal to find a cure.
I'm freezing. I can't stand these old drafty aluminum windows anymore. It's impossible to keep this house warm.
This is crazy. I'm calling Universal Windows Direct right now. Hello? I'm calling about the Chance Special.
Buy 2 windows, get the third free, and receive a super glass upgrade with your purchase. Plus, 0 down, 0 payments, and 0 interest for 9 years. Proud sponsor of the Vegas Golden Knights.
Universal Windows Direct. We love our new windows.
Vegas Nighthawks gear is here. Get ready for Vegas's inaugural IFL season with official Nighthawks apparel. Stop by the Arsenal at City National Arena and the Livery in Henderson, or visit VegasTeamStore.com and look your best on game days with Nighthawks hats, shirts, and more. Get ready for Nighthawks football and unite in flight.
You gotta put your heart and soul into it. Give it 110%. This is what you've been working for. You gotta play like there's no tomorrow because...
Yeah, Dad. I got it.
Because this is where champions are made.
NHL Trade Deadline 2022 presented by Allegiant, VGK angle, and we can all kind of relate to Derek Engelland being in the carpool lane right there right now, given that the Vegas Golden Knights are in the queue. It's being reported that the deal has been made with the Anaheim Ducks, and it revolves around Evgeny Dodonov. We're waiting for that confirmation from the Vegas Golden Knights and hockey operations side of things, and General Manager Kelly McCrimmon is scheduled to step into Studio 31 and give us some comments on what happened today, the Dodonov angle, if it does revolve around that, and just where we are from a health side of it from the Golden Knights. Not sure. There's been no reporting on what the compensation would be for Dodonov if it is that. So that leads you to believe that it may be pick or something conditional. And if that's the case, again, we're kind of speculating here, but that's our job. And we've got a live stream, and we've got
we're doing what you guys are doing.
Silence is not an option. But if it's not something off a roster or a player, then that immediately causes us to jump to some kind of conclusion or anticipation that the lineup is going to get healthier sooner than later.
Right. Or a guy like Runbeer gets another opportunity.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Because really, what you're looking at is, and we're speculating, and I want to, that'll be one of our first questions. What went into a trade like this? Was it purely salary, or does this indicate, without giving, house secrets away, does this give us a nod that some guys might be closer than we first thought?
And it was a final minute deal,
right?
To be still in the trade queue and going through the trade call with Central Registry.
Evidently, we were 32 out of 32.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the earlier report was that there was 33 trades in the queue, and yeah, it might be down on the end of it. So there was one transaction from a Golden Knights perspective, and that involved Derek Pouliot, who was signed to a National Hockey League contract a couple of days ago and played 2 games for the Vegas Golden Knights, just over 14 minutes in both of them. The defenseman who broke in with the Vancouver Canucks and was out of the National Hockey League for a couple of years. Apparently those 2 games enough, because while he was placed on waivers, the Seattle Kraken put in a claim, and now Derek Pouliot, who would have been playing tonight against the Minnesota Wild, is a member of the Seattle Kraken.
It's, from a player standpoint, somebody who's been 3 years between NHL games, former first-round pick. Again, talk about long roads and winding paths and getting back to where you need to be as a player. It's a great story. So for him, what a success! And if you're Seattle, he's economical because the salary that he was going to be signed at coming out of the American Hockey League would be the minimum, and they need players. They traded so many players off of their roster that suddenly they need guys that are NHL ready, and maybe not a long-term solution, but in the short term, he's going to be a Seattle Kraken member until the end of the season.
It is the Trade Deadline live stream presented by Allegiant from Studio 31. Kelly McCrimmon scheduled to pop in just a little bit. Want to show you, if we can, we've got just a list of where the Vegas Golden Knights are set up with the draft, and that's coming up in July. In Montreal is the National Hockey League draft. It'll be in person this year, which is a great step forward after a couple of virtual drafts. And so this is the Vegas Golden Knights draft arsenal for 2022, 2023, and 2024. And when you go through it, there's no first rounder this year, but they have a second rounder, a third rounder, 2 fifths, and they have their pick in round 6 and 7. So maybe Dodonov's a draft choice, but I'm not saying that he's going to certainly bring back a first rounder. But no. That's where they have their first rounders in the next 2 years. Don't have a second in 2023.
Yeah, you hope you don't have to give up a pick as part of this with Dodonov,
right?
To take. To have a team take that salary on could happen, but especially this season, you have 2 rounds that you're dormied in. The first being the obvious one, so you really don't want to give up another. I guess you can give up a 5th round pick if you had to this year to go along with it to get the contract off your books. But yeah, it's going to be something to see. What this shows me is how much to the immediate this team has been built. You're just trading away future chips, because when you look at a first round pick, unless they're generational, it's 3 to 4 years from the time you've heard his name till an impact or maybe even challenging for a lineup spot. So that's a long ways off for a GM when you have assemble the talent that the Vegas Golden Knights have via trades. And part of that has been giving up first-round picks or picks you made that were in the first round and as part of trade chips.
So that's a 3-year look from 2022 to 2024. And I'll just focus on the first 3 rounds. There's 9 selections there that you go in with, and they have 8 selections, total picks in that with 2 third-rounders next year. And they don't have the first round Jack Eichel and don't have a second rounder. So 8 of your 9 picks, where you are in a competitive standpoint, that's a decent amount of opportunities to make your selections.
It is. And there's other ways to acquire players. And I don't just mean trades. I mean, there's junior and college free agents.
Which they've been active.
Very active. Zach Whitecloud, prime example. So there's other ways, and their scouting is so good. You can find guys in the American Hockey League that aren't part of Henderson. So not that worried. And the reason I'm not that worried is because management, Kelly and George, don't seem that worried about it. It's like, well, let's get the best guys on the ice that we possibly can. We have a veteran team. Let's get after it.
You know, somebody that will probably be impacted the most because of the loss of Derek Pouliot will be Manny Vivros and company. Like the player availability there, because that team in Henderson, and April 2nd, by the way, the Dollar Loan Center, big debut at the new facility from the hockey side of it. Looking forward to that. But they've been decimated because of what's happened with the big club and the Golden Knights.
Yeah, because you more than likely Pahal's back in the lineup. Because of the Pouliot, acquisition off of waivers by the Kraken. So they've been just about injuries and call-ups, as you might imagine. We've gone through the litany and the length and the duration of long-term injuries that have plagued this Vegas Golden Knights team all season long. Well, guess what? That's given a lot of opportunities to guys from Henderson, but that's also put Henderson in a tough spot. They're fighting for their playoff lives in the Pacific in the American Hockey League right now.
Golden Knights coming off back-to-back wins, beating the Florida Panthers, and then making good on that opportunity by defeating the Los Angeles Kings 5-1. They've scored 5 goals in each of the last 2 games. Looked like they've found some offensive mojo again, tossing the 3 that they scored against the Columbus Blue Jackets prior to that. And there's some momentum offensively. How do you go from having trouble throwing a stone in the ocean from on top of the waves to where they are lately and being able to really need those goals and score those goals?
Well, they've dug in a lot better.
Yeah.
And again, we saw
What do you mean by that, dug in?
That instead of just coming down and settling for a shot, hold on to it longer. Let something develop. And I don't mean necessarily a trailer where it's a back pass. Let somebody get to the net. They've been better at putting the puck to the net and get it to the paint with people there. So the timing that way has been better. And holding on to the puck a little bit longer, allowing support to arrive for a better chance in the offensive third. So there's been that. And quite frankly, they've been defending. I know they've given up lots of shots, but to me they've defended quite well, given the fact that we just said who's out of the lineup defensively. And from that, they've been able to get back to moving the puck forward. Alex Pietrangelo had a really tough 10-game stretch, and now he has 5 points in his last handful of games. So he's become a factor again offensively. That was a big part of the first half of the season. Offense from the defense, top 3 in the league for most of that first 50 games in terms of generating scoring and point production from the blue line. That had dried up for a while. That's returning. So, and then the last part was the power play. We went from a shot mentality, like not being able to score anywhere, not even looking like we had no confidence, so it looked very, very disjointed. Go to a shot mentality, and the other piece of it is let's come across the blue line zone entry, and if we have a good look, quick strike first before we worry about setting it up.
You noticed that right away with the goal Jack Eichel set up with Chandler Stevenson.
Well, it's something that I try to teach kids when I coach kids, because the kids watch, right? They see I'm on the power play.
Stop, half boards.
Right,
Yeah.
and I'm on the half board. I stopped it up. I was like, okay. So now you're trying to get the shot that was better than the one that was already there. It's like, okay, it happens and helps sometimes. Where I really prefer that, and I mean, it's a personal preference. I prefer quick strike first, recover the puck, because you're going to have to do that anyway to keep a power play alive. Just do it right off the rush, retrieve the puck, then get set up. And 2 of the 4 goals they've scored in the last 4 games on the power play have been off the rush.
Thanks for sticking with us on the 2022 NHL Trade Deadline live stream presented by Allegiant. Kelly McCrimmon is going to join us when they are finished with their trade call with the National Hockey League. So we appreciate you sticking it out with us and having this conversation. They play in Minnesota tonight. Interesting. That was the rink that Logan Thompson made his National Hockey League debut, going in relief.
Yep.
And put up, I think, 12 minutes of scoreless, perfect performance. And Dylan Coghlan scored the hat trick. And Dylan Coghlan, if offense from the blue line and being able to jump up, like he's a very top prospect in the offensive side of the game. And we discuss and we anticipate. There's been starts and stops to it, but he's in one of those stretches right now. And maybe he's focused on the defensive side of his game. I don't know how much Derek Pouliot talked about that, how he had to really focus on that side of it. But he's in a spell. Is it simply going back in memories and being him talking about, hey, I scored 3 goals here, or people reminding him, hey, isn't this place you scored 3 goals? Can that give him a little bit of jump?
Yeah, there are places you end up feeling really comfortable where you play along the circuit for whatever reason. Hat trick would be a good one.
Yeah, hat trick.
And so you remember that, you have good feelings, good vibes for whatever reason. It might be the lighting, might be the ice. It could just be one of those things.
And people just tell you that you played great there,
and
so
you're feeling good about it right off the bat.
Where did you play great? Or where did you play poor? Like, did you have those?
I was like the old Edmonton Oilers, Northlands Coliseum.
That didn't have much to do with the building, though, right?
No, I liked the building. The ice was good. I wasn't very good in that building. 0-6-2, my record against the Oilers in that building.
And where was there a building where you played great over the years, whether it was in college, in the pros?
Yeah, I played well. Joe Louis Arena on the road. I seemed to play really well at the Saddle Dome in our division against Calgary. I got a lot of those starts.
And they were a good team.
They were a very good team. So yeah, it happens. You know, you just feel comfortable. There's something about it. But yeah, thanks for letting me off the hook all these years later. That it wasn't my fault.
Zero. I pulled
it
rank
wasn't the building's fault.
Yeah,
you pulled rank. I have the 2 R's.
Yes, that's true. And technically, you were here before me.
Well, yeah, I wasn't. Yeah, I mean, there's no rank.
I'm just what I'm trying to do is climb the ladder.
Okay, so
the draft and developing players. You talked about 4 years. And then you threw out, and we talked about college players. Right. So I'm going to put a player in that conversation who kind of fits all of it, and it's Zach Whitecloud, and how important he is to this team now.
And again, Gary, we talked about shot suppression. Zach Whitecloud is one of the better, from an analytics standpoint, measured who he plays against and what kind of shots are generated against his team versus what his team's able to generate on the opposition. He's one of the best in the league. And you're right, he was undrafted, goes to college, comes out, signs, gets in kind of, sort of. It looks like he would think he would look like. I didn't even know he could shoot the puck. It was defense only.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, confidence, did some work in the summer. He's coming off the blue line, reading it really well. Good hockey IQ. Gets to the net, gets shot, scores a few goals. Gets a new contract. And then you have all these injuries. He's kind of been one of those guys that's the defensive conscience back there. And it doesn't matter who you put him with. Recently, he's been paired with Theodore, the lefty-righty being more of a thing they're shooting for, but they lose that now.
Well, Pouliot was a big reason why he was.
Because Pahal is a righty. And Pahal and Coghlan struggled together in Winnipeg. Now, Pahal might be better his second game, but he looked a little out of his element. You hope he has a better game. If he's the one to go in, I'm just thinking
could be
about,
Miramano. I haven't seen any recalls. So.
Yeah, it could be, right? Those are the kinds of things. But you could then go with 5D, which, Pete DeBoer, Ryan McGill, who changes the D, they've done that a lot, where Coghlan gets 20-some minutes, and his partner gets 12, right? Because
They
everybody
kind
else
of
is
did
over.
that the other night against Florida,
Right.
where Miramanov only got the 5 minutes.
They did
and
that. They were much more even
with the 4 guys.
Well, they were much more even the next game, you know. But you're right. They didn't play Miramanov very much after the middle of the second period. It was kind of a rotation of 5 guys.
Do you like that setup, 13-5?
Yeah, I wouldn't like that setup that much, because you have a guy.
There's 11-7.
11
12
and
6.
Right, 12 and 6 is customary. That's what they had. It's just they didn't play them very much.
Because we saw some of the 5 last year.
Unfortunately.
Right.
Right. It was, what was it? It wasn't 13 and 5, I don't think.
No, true. That's true.
But 11 and 7 isn't bad, because if you go back to it's not great for the defenseman, but if you go back to youth hockey, you have your 3 best centermen and 4 sets of wingers, and there's your 11, and that means your best centerman gets some shifts with players lower in the roster. You might get a mismatch in a 4th line settings, for instance. For the 7D, that's usually if you've got the guy that's banged up, or if you're just short on forwards and you're dressing 11, you dress the extra D.
On the college front, Brennan Brisson won the Big Ten title on Saturday. He'll open the NCAA tournament Friday against American International. That's noon our time on ESPNU. I'm taking Michigan against American
One versus
International.
16.
Yeah.
And AIC was pretty funny. They just did a Google map and just said, we're going to leave this up here and show people where we are, because American International.
Where?
It's north of Hartford, I believe.
Well, you're closer than I am, because I didn't have a clue. But Michigan has been all world this year, and they are all in with such a stacked lineup. And it might be we aren't sure, because we've seen a few guys turn pro once their seasons have been over, and I'm just on pins and needles waiting to see what Brennan Brisson's plans are after this season, his sophomore season at the University of Michigan. But it could be a couple of weeks before.
He's not a freshman. Is this his second
sophomore?
Year? Yeah. I would say it's pretty good bet he might turn pro. I mean, his dad would know he's an agent.
Yeah, his dad will know timing and all that.
Maybe there's a hockey dad you might want to talk to about what is it the right time for him to turn pro. He's done an awful lot of scoring. Went to the Olympics.
Yep.
So
he was in the shootout.
Right.
Like, that's how much they thought of him.
And so you have to look. What do you have to, like? Maybe you go back if you come up short winning a championship. That's one reason to return. If you all
Owen Power did that.
That's right, last year. So there's those kinds of reasons to return. Personally, I mean, I don't know the kid. I've probably seen him play half a dozen times on television, and he looks like he's a scorer. Now, he's not a guy I don't think that comes right into this lineup.
Well, he's just got that shot on the power play.
He does, and he does the other stuff. But where do you start wanting to learn that professionally?
Mm-hmm.
You know, at Henderson.
Well, it depends on how many of the 7 are in, doesn't it?
What's that?
The group of 7, the famous
right,
group of 7.
Exactly. How many guys? You know, are we doing this? I would say that it becomes the group decision if you come up short from a national title this year.
Okay.
And then after that, it's all individual.
Because if Vegas doesn't have a Patrick Stone, Smith, then it becomes
different.
A lot easier. That's my group of 7.
There you go.
I don't anticipate him playing on the blue line or in goal. I'm going to stand firm on that. But when you talk about three great wingers out of the lineup, when a season does, not to making decisions for Kelly McCrimmon, I'm sure he'll remind me of that when he stops by Studio 31. But AIU is at Springfield, Massachusetts. AIC, sorry. Springfield, Massachusetts, home of the Basketball Hall of Fame.
All right. I was in the region. Guess I can't read
Google.
I can't read Google Maps very well.
Well, those pins are big, right?
But I thought it was really kind of tongue-in-cheek funny of them and cool of them. They don't have much of a chance, but hey, you can always be out-goalied. You never know.
Yeah, when Isn't that the case? And it's 116 and go on through to.
Have you filled out your bracket yet?
I have not.
Nate Ewell has sent it out. I haven't looked at it.
Well, I
have until Thursday.
I'm not going to lie to you. I've been meaning to do it over the last 2 hours and 22 minutes, but I've been busy. So it will happen.
We're speculating ourselves into trouble. That's always a bad.
Thanks for staying with us here.
Yeah,
and,
we appreciate it.
We do, and things get a little more casual as we move on. Kelly McCrimmon, his media availability with the general media will follow his conversation with us here in Studio 31. And a reminder that we do have the Golden Knights in action this afternoon. 4:30 pregame show on AT&T Sportsnet. 4 o'clock on Fox Sports Las Vegas. 5 o'clock face-off as the Golden Knights try to earn their third straight victory. Are you a big scoreboard watcher, or were you when you played?
Yeah.
And did it? Did you like to know, or
yes.
Was it one of those just I need to know type things?
Well,
like a golfer. Golfer, does he look at the leaderboard, or does she not look at the leaderboard?
Yeah, I just, again, as a fan, I didn't do the computations, as I'm either sitting on the bench mostly or standing in my crease sometimes. Mm-hmm. And you see the scores.
So you would look in the building?
Oh, yeah, I'd look in the building and see what was going on. They did have those even then.
I was going to say, was it a chisel on the rock? Or was it the
guy behind?
There
was a guy behind it.
The old high school volleyball scoreboard where you flip it over, a 3, a 4.
Manual lift the numbers. But no, I didn't make any, big conclusions.
Like Mark Stone is a guy that would know it all.
Right. He'd be same thing, especially when you're out here. Everything's happened, east of you, so you're always kind of up on who's done what on any given night. And again, everything's so available, highlights. So if you're a fan, you can be tapped in, and I absolutely would be.
How does Vegas take the energy from T-Mobile onto the road, where they've been good this year, but we know what happened on the recent trip? They captured that crowd, or the crowd captured them, and it probably was the latter, because there was some great energy in the building for the Florida game, and it carried over, and there was no angst or being quiet at the start of that Florida game coming off the road trip. Really impressive by everybody that was in the building. It was awesome.
It was a return home welcome from the fans. That was awesome on that one. I like the afternoon game, right? It's like, okay, lots of kids, and Jack Eichel steps on the ice and the place erupts. Mm-hmm. They were so excited. So both games had great home crowd energy. How do you take that on? You don't, it's a decent atmosphere in Minnesota. It's not nearly as raucous as the Fortress, to say the least. But it's a knowledgeable crowd. It's a big crowd. It's a big building. So if they're selling out, you can draw energy, I think.
Is it good that they're facing a team that like they had that 7-game battle with last year? It's ironic that Marc-Andre Fleury gets traded there when he beat them in Game 7 at T-Mobile Arena. But does that help give you some? Like, you're automatically engaged in the fight.
You're going to be engaged. You've beaten them 3 times when they used to have your number. Mm-hmm. That's not including playoffs. So you need the points. Like I don't like if the atmosphere is good with the crowd, there's energy regardless, home or away. And the second
you got to think that there'd be atmosphere, especially off the big deals that they made. Yeah.
Right. So you've got that, and then you have the fact that you need the points. Plain and simple. No need to overthink what the motivation is on a team level or an individual level. That's how I look at it. I mean, so regardless if you're playing it at home, very unique home ice advantage. I know the numbers haven't been there this year, but it is. It's crazy good. I can't imagine being a player on the team and skating out on the ice to that kind of reception. Minnesota, different kind of energy. It's going to be a good hockey environment. We need 2 points. This is a team that we're developing a little bit of animosity with. Should be a good hockey game.
The Golden Knights used to be a really easy team to read. And now with all the injuries, it's certainly more difficult because of the roster,
right,
and the configuration. But one thing that has become pretty standard is the bigger the game, the more of a response that you get. This is more of a big game team, and
you have the research on this. But
it's
anecdotal. There we go. There's our anecdote. But you're right. The losses to Arizona, to Buffalo, those were games that you should have. There was 3 on that trip where it's like Columbus. It's like, okay, we got 0 points.
Philly,
really?
Buffalo.
Philly?
Yeah.
So it's and you barely beat Ottawa.
Then you come home and you beat Florida.
Right.
And you beat a key divisional game.
Right. Back to back. Those 2 back-to-back wins, better than your other back-to-back wins that you've had this season, based on the opponent. And so you hope to take all of that we've talked about at length to tonight. I mean, that's what you want to do against the Wild.
Pete DeBoer mentioned last week that it's his job to set the tone for the day. The attitude and the energy is the coach's job. I thought it was really interesting because
it's taking a lot on.
Yeah, a lot on. But in this state where they are so beat up, and there is easily an opportunity for woe is me to seep in. I thought that was telling from the head coach, and I don't see Pete as a pom-pom guy.
No,
walking in there, but he said responsible for attitude and energy, which is be positive and pump the guys up.
It's a really good insight, actually, into how a season is different. Because if you are fully healthy, I'll guarantee you that wouldn't be his first answer. It's still part of it. You can't walk around and be out of sync with your team, but you'd have so many veterans.
They would do it.
They would do it for you. Whereas here, with so much volatility to the lineup and so many youngsters coming into it, he can't be. So he has to really walk a fine line. We're positive, but am I stern or am I more jovial, if you will?
Mm-hmm.
That's good insight. That's good coaching. You're trying to manage the group to get the most out of them, even though that group keeps changing. That's
so how much do you think he's done to pump the team up and keep them positive, as opposed to coaching, stern, discipline? Because there's so many, you've got so many different people in the lineup throughout this season, and every game in the lineup where there's some coaches that would never let that go.
Right.
And Montreal, Dominic Ducharme didn't let that go, and never. Right. And it wore on his team, and they had to make a change. He's a great coach, really good coach, but he couldn't get away from the strategic and disciplined side of it. And
I understand the group management is a huge part of coaching.
So how much do you think, Pete, you as a coach as well, and a former National Hockey League player, that positive, like percentage-wise, I'm fascinated by where that split is.
Well, I think you can tell. Like, think about the 5-game road trip. Could have won every game. Could have won every game, but then coming out of the Winnipeg, like, we didn't get any saves. Like, finally, got a little bit more caustic about some performances.
But still positive, saying that he liked their game.
The team's game.
Right.
But there were reasons, right. So now we're kind of separating it out. It's like, you know what? Mm-hmm. Still not good enough. We didn't win. So I think early on it was more rah-rah. And then in terms of style of play, X's and O's, if you will, to me, that becomes about, all right, these are the tenets. This is how we play. It changes roughly because we haven't seen a lot of great neutral zone chances. Let's be honest. When this team's healthy and fully functioning, they're as fun to watch as anybody in the league, and it's up and down. It's a track meet, and they have so many routes that they skate in between the blue lines that free up space for the next guy with speed. We haven't really seen a lot of that based on your lineup. Doesn't mean you're not trying to do the same things, just a little bit more station to station, if you will. So I think that's the X and O side. I think it's much more important, and I hadn't thought of asking Pete about that, but that's great that he told you. That is group management at this point. I guess you're guiding it, you're steering it. And don't forget, you don't want to leave that to who's left in that room, Pietrangelo?
Yeah.
He's exhausted. I don't need him doing that job. But if there's 4 or 5 of them, if Stone's in there, Pacioretty's in there, if all those guys are healthy, well, that's a big group that can steer the ship in terms of the mentality.
I want to get to the lines that we saw the other night. And
Yeah.
I don't know whether they're going to go with the same lineup. I would assume after a couple of wins that they would. But as we continue here on the 2022 NHL Trade Deadline stream from Studio 31, the live stream presented by Allegiant, I want to tell you that there's just a post from Chris Johnson from TSN who's put out that nearly 2.5 hours, now we're going past that, 2.5 hours post-trade deadline. There are still teams on hold with NHL Central Registry to have their trades approved. And from the reporting of Emily Kaplan from ESPN, the Golden Knights are apparently one of those clubs in a deal with the Anaheim Ducks that revolves around Evgeny Dodonov, and we're waiting to have that confirmed.
We know that's where Kelly is.
Yeah, so that's why Kelly's not here yet.
Right.
And he is scheduled to join us, and he'll swing by here and then go to his media availability with the regular media. We just happen to be on the way, so it's perfect here in Studio 31 at City National Arena. So that is still the plan, that we will bring you Kelly McCrimmon, and we'll also talk to Kelly on the pregame show on AT&T Sportsnet tonight at 4:30 Pacific time, and during the first intermission we'll bring you that conversation. So want to make sure all the bases are covered to make sure that you get the information on your hockey club and the Vegas Golden Knights, who will try to make it 3 wins in a row tonight against the Minnesota Wild. The lines the other night had Jack Eichel and then Chandler Stevenson, Nolan Patrick, and Brett Howden as the centers.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't know whether it's the second line, third line, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But Stevenson, Carrier, and Waugh seem to have something.
Absolutely. You're looking at different elements again that fit nicely together, and they're playing well. Like Nick Waugh is on a 4-game point streak. Carrier had 10 hits. Just don't get locked in on the number, because those are speculative the way they count them.
Yeah.
But the style of game, it points to that. And he had 3 shots on goal. And then, of course, we take a look at Chandler Stevenson. He seems to be meshing with those guys, using his speed and making plays. So, yeah, they've been excellent.
Stevenson's range is impressive. And I didn't see the Pacioretty Stone magic, and it worked. Like, Stone and Pacioretty are great with Chandler Stevenson.
Right.
Not saying that Jack Eichel won't be that guy when it happens, because I think he will be, but that's really impressive. Stevenson has more range to, I wouldn't call him a fixer, because there are players that you can put with that just fix other players a lot. But he's like, you go from Pacioretty, Stone to Carrier and Waugh, very different wingers, and somehow that worked. And does Stevenson's game change? Does he become a little more involved?
Well, let's put it this way. Yes, is the short answer. But remember, they put him on the wing when Jack Eichel. And to his credit, in talking to the coaching staff, they said he felt stuck
on the wing,
that he can't loop and keep his speed up. What's his number 1 attribute? Skating and speed. Put him back at the middle. Doesn't seem to matter, as to your point, who he plays with, as long as he's moving his feet, skating, making things happen. And he certainly has been doing that with Nick Waugh.
Nolan Patrick, Gary Lawless, and Dave Gosher 90 minutes ago. It feels like we're talking about the change in Nolan Patrick this time, coming off the injury, as opposed to the start of the year and then when he's come back previously. And it has been noticeable. There are some chances and some bright spots along the way. And I know that hockey operations has been really encouraged at different times this year by Nolan Patrick's game, even without points and without production. But the little bit of bite changes his game incredibly.
It does for everyone. I think you have to, again, dig in and play this sport the way it's meant to be played. Not, there are some guys that can dance in the open ice. Very few, I might add, at the NHL level. You're going to have to fight for your space, fight for your shot, defensively for your positioning, all those kinds of things. That's what I've seen Nolan Patrick do a little bit more. Hasn't been as much on the perimeter. I don't know his game that well, I'll be honest with you. He's missed so much time with Philadelphia. I remember when he was such a high draft pick, second overall. Haven't seen anything close to that kind of.
Yeah, we haven't seen dynamic Nolan Patrick.
No, and I don't know what that looks like.
But a little bit of nasty is the wrong word, because he's not going to be a nasty player. But getting into it and at least being a presence.
Engaged.
Some players don't play well when they're engaged. They feel like it slows them down and takes them out of rhythm. This seems to have helped him become more of a presence on the ice.
Yeah, and here's a guy constantly over the last almost 2 seasons now, constantly trying to come back and establish himself or reestablish as an NHL player, and then see where that takes him. So it's been a really rough ride for him. Let's be honest, even while he's been here. So you don't want to be critical. You like to see some signs but I still think we're far away from seeing consistent play out of him.
Well, isn't that incredible that you say that? As I look at the centers, because Jack Eichel is 16 games in, and we still see there's been, and the other night against LA, his ability to dish the puck was like spectacular.
That upper body injury
makes you
his
tingle
shot
a little bit.
So,
but it puts the focus on dishing the puck, and all of a sudden he's
all over the place.
Yeah, and so you've got an real upside still to come there, and
we hope
a long progression straight ahead for Nolan Patrick as two-year 4 centers.
Yeah, and then you got Howden doing his thing and looking to be a force as well. So
you can't talk about Brett Howden enough. That's what I've gleaned out of the 2 hours and 40 minutes here.
Well, if we want to talk about Nolan Patrick, you have to talk about Brett Howden because he's been better.
So coming into this season, Nolan Patrick was thinking,
and
we had Nolan Patrick maybe outside shot, number 1 line, power play going into the season, Disher, Brett Howden, 3rd, 4th line.
Right. That's fine.
Center iceman.
Then he was coach's decision a few times, and then he was put in.
Remember when he scored and he still came out?
Right. For a game.
Yeah.
And then a couple games, 1 or 2 games later, he goes back in and Patrick came out. Because and then he didn't come out of the lineup until he got injured again. So, and then Patrick went back in and he got hurt again. So it's been a stop and start for both of them. I'd like to see what I saw from Howden's game, him holding onto the puck as much as he did against LA. I'd like to see that with Nolan Patrick a little bit more. He's still a little skittish with the puck for me. He's got a great shot, then shoot it. Otherwise, hold on to it a bit longer. But easy for me to say I didn't have to go through all the concussion symptoms and rehabs that he has.
One player that they would love to get going is Bill. And William Karlsson, we know what he did in year number 1. We know his value as a 200-foot player. We know how incredibly productive he can be, even shorthanded in a penalty-killing scenario. But we haven't seen the 5-on-5. We haven't seen the power play production. How much of what do you see in his game that you would like to see more of?
It's a hard thing to answer because he seems to be around it.
Yes.
He's on the top line.
There's nothing that you can go, that's missing.
A little bit of confidence. I've seen him pass up shots that I'd like to see him take. I'm sure the coaching staff has clipped those and said, you're not going to get out of a scoring slump unless you shoot the puck. Those kinds of things. But his game is so good overall. It's like, you need him to score. And that's been disappointing in terms of...
Like, he's still valuable when he doesn't score, but this roster needs him to score.
Right, and if you're going to play on the first line and you're always on the second line at a minimum, or the 1A line, the misfits line, you need to. If you're going to play that many minutes, you need more than just good defense. That's what I would say.
Can we? Because it's been a while since we aired the Ashley Weiss conversation with Jonathan Marchessault. So just wondering, can we go back to that? Can we load that back up? And just because there was so much in that discussion, the Ashley Weiss pregame interview after the morning skate that she conducted with Jonathan Marchessault today, talking about trade deadline and talking about what this day is like for the team, and talking about just where this team is at as a whole. So we'll go back to Minnesota and St. Paul, and this is Reading the Room, the interview presented by Infusion Care, Ashley Weiss with Jonathan Marchessault. Can't hear it.
I think as you grow older, you realize kind of out of your control. So like me right now, it's like out of my control. I don't think too much about it. But as a younger guy, I think it happens a little bit more often, and you don't necessarily realize how there's a lot of talk, but not necessarily a lot of action.
What are you guys doing throughout the day? Like, do you keep an eye on what's happening online? Do you talk to each other about anything? What's that like?
Yeah, I think we talk about it. I think I'm a big hockey fan, so I like to see what everybody's worth, you know, like the trades, good trades, bad trades, stuff like that. So definitely talk about it for sure.
What do you say to the younger guys who maybe don't know how to handle this day?
Just to make them realize it's out of your control. Like you control what you can do on the ice and off the ice, but those are higher level people, I would say, and they control it more than us, so don't worry about it.
This team's made some big moves on the deadline previously. What is it like when one of your teammates, one of your brothers gets traded? What are those conversations like?
Yeah, they're unfortunate, but we all in the same boat. It's the way the business goes, so it's one of those things. You say good luck, we'll see you soon, and you kind of move on, and you obviously there's some trades that hurt more than others, but it's definitely not. It's unfortunate situation.
On the flip side, you'll have a lot of guys who join new teams today. What do you do as a player to make those new guys feel welcome in a room?
I mean, it's like beginning of the year a little bit. You want to like have like team dinners and stuff like that. You know, want to include everybody as soon as possible. You don't want anyone that is left out. So I think it's on the veteran guys to make sure that everybody's taken care of. And yeah, I think that's how we as a team handle it.
What are the challenges of having trade deadline day fall on a game day?
I mean, obviously, just you don't think about the game until you get to the rink, really, because you talk about trade deadline the whole day. So that's how I see it personally, and we'll make sure we're ready for business when we get there tonight.
The fact that there's been so much uncertainty around your team all season because of injuries, because of not knowing who's going to be in the lineup on any given night, do you feel like that helps you guys adjust to the uncertainty of this kind of day?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's so many talks about our team, right? Like we do a lot of moves fast when the results is not there. So it's gonna be yeah, we're gonna keep a close eye on it. But it's like I said, it's kind of a little bit of out of our control, and we'll see what happens. But it's just our roster has been really different the whole year. So we'll see what happens here.
Is there a little bit of a sense of relief that once this day passes, you do know what team you have the rest of the season, and you can just focus on that final push to the playoffs?
Yeah, it is a relief, I think, to know like what's our team, what are we gonna work with for the rest of the season, and for like right now we're just focusing on making the playoff and get as much healthy bodies we can have, and that's really what we're concentrating on, and we can pass all the rumors and all that stuff behind us and focus on that.
Jonathan, I really appreciate you taking the time on a game day. Good luck tonight.
Thank you.
All right, guys, back to you.
Thank you, Ashley. That was recorded a couple of hours ago as we bring you the trade deadline live stream presented by Allegiant. And we are live on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know that. You've been watching for more than 2.5 hours, waiting to see what the Vegas Golden Knights will and now have done at the NHL Trade Deadline. There is ESPN reporting that the Golden Knights have got together with the Anaheim Ducks in a trade that centers on Evgeny Dodonov, and we've been told that there's plenty of trades in the queue. That's why Kelly McCrimmon is not here yet, more than 2.5 hours after the official deadline. Coming up, we're 12 minutes shy of 3 hours since the National Hockey League trade deadline. But tonight's action, this is one thing that that has bugged me about the National Hockey League, is so much is put into the trade deadline and the push, is I wish it was a dark night. On the schedule. We do have a game tonight, Vegas against Minnesota at 5 o'clock Pacific time, as they start the 2-game trip, Minnesota and Winnipeg. But there's just one area where everybody, the players, coaches, management, everybody, wouldn't have to worry about trade deadline, taking players off on a pregame skate like Minnesota had to do today, and a couple other teams had to do, and then go out and play.
Yeah, that makes some sense. But I'm sure they've done their market research.
Yeah, and nobody this year with the schedule jammed up, you couldn't do it.
Well,
like, this is a bad.
Right. But don't forget, I think so. It would end at noon Eastern.
Pacific, 3 o'clock Eastern.
Right, noon Pacific, in theory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Right.
And
in
if
theory.
it was dark, it just goes away. Now each market goes off and promotes the game where there's games, promotes what just happened in the league. So I think it's kind of...
and sometimes seamlessly is what we're about to do.
So it's one of those things where you actually get to extend the talk of the league, if you will.
We have several teams that have been active. Colorado has acquired different elements to their game.
Yep.
And Minnesota has acquired a goaltender.
Toughness.
The New York Rangers
they did the best.
Pulled in 3 different acquisitions and didn't
they get 4? They have Frankie Petrano.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
right?
we're
Justin
going back
Braun,
a couple. Yeah.
Tyler Mott. Oh yeah, you're just going today, and Andrew Kopp. I mean Mott and Kopp and Vetrano. That's a line. That's an NHL line.
So is there, if we're talking winners and losers, Seattle sold off. I'm a little shocked that Arizona didn't sell as many players as they did. But the clubs that are building and trying to be relevant in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year and have a chance to win. I love what Colorado did.
Yep.
I'm impressed by Minnesota. Little perplexed by Edmonton. Calgary added sooner than
I thought both. Why are you perplexed by Edmonton?
I just expected. I was waiting for a goalie. I was.
Right. Okay.
I know. And Koskinen has been great for a month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
But there's the players. People are just waiting. Not players, but people are just waiting to say, "I told you so" when he stumbles.
Right.
But did the Rangers make Tampa, Florida both loaded up too?
Yeah, for sure.
Did the Rangers take the biggest step though in what they've acquired to be a contender?
I think so, because that could be a line to me. Like to me, that you can just put those 3 together and go, okay, you guys are the new guys, play together. We'll be fine. Justin Braun on the back end gives you third pairing experience, and literally Braun as well. Plays a heavy game. To me, if they were lacking depth, they're no longer lacking depth.
And they can compete in that division?
Well, I think so. Well, I think so with that goaltending. Shesterkin's been so good. I like the way Trouba and Fox on the blue. I mean, Lindgren. I really like what the Rangers have going on.
I have some news to report, and it's not the greatest, and I apologize for this, but we're going to conclude the stream now. Delays are preventing Kelly from joining us, and we
weren't
apologize.
stringing you along on purpose, honestly.
No, we've been told that, and write all your letters and comments to Darren Elliott.
One R. Just remember one.
We do. We're sorry. That it was our
Yeah,
intentions to bring you Kelly McCrimmon and his comments post trade deadline all along. We will have we want to have Kelly McCrimmon on the pregame show at 4:30 on AT&T Sportsnet, and hopefully in the first intermission tonight. That is our. We're changing things up a little bit, and that's now our focus.
It's on the NHL office. What's going on?
Yeah.
Technology. What is going on?
Yeah. And I'm not sure what's happened. The draft a couple of years ago was slow. Like, things just get a little bit wonky, but there's a delay. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to bring you Kelly McCrimmon right now. But in an hour and a half, we'll be back on the air on AT&T Sportsnet, and hopefully with a fresh conversation with Kelly McCrimmon, along with Darren Elliott on that pregame show.
Sounds
then
good.
Dave Gosher and Ashley Weiss and Shane Natty with the call on the TV side, Gary Lawless and Dan Duva on the radio. Thanks for hanging out with me.
That was fun. Talking hockey.
Appreciate it. And thank you for being part of the Trade Deadline 2022 live stream presented by Allegiant.